Creepypastas. To some, a bygone era of internet urban legends and horror stories. But if you're anything like me, and I know I am, you're of the belief that creepypasta never really went anywhere. We just took the topics and ideas that interested us and found our little niches to enjoy, whether it's lost media, ARGs, and analog horror, or just better written stories. Creepypasta evolved alongside us until we didn't recognize it anymore. But I still think about a lot of those old stories. So much so that I have tried since 2022 to write a long, comprehensive video about the early days of creepypasta and how it evolved over time. This is not that video, as I am still trying to figure out how to do a video like that. So instead, I would like to read you some of my favorites. So get yourself comfy, because I'm going to read you 15 creepypastas, like the good old days. You're lying in your bed. The dull worrying of your air conditioner is the only thing separating you from total silence. You know that particular silence that is so heavy and thick, it's almost the equivalent of a loud noise in itself. The kind of silence where you could hear a pin drop 3 rooms away in. The kind of silence that fills your ears with the sound of your own heartbeat as your ear presses against your pillow. That kind of silence. The dull worrying is the only noise you can hear, a noise that typically goes unnoticed, until it is the only noise present. It's comforting, whether you realize it or not. Sort of white noise. But suddenly, your room is back at the temperature specified on the thermostat, and the worrying comes to a stop. As the vent makes a dull clang, to your misfortune, you are not yet asleep, and the silence sets in. You should be comforted by the knowledge that you could hear anything and everything in your surroundings, making up for the lack of vision provided by the darkness. But you aren't. It's this very environment that sets you on edge. Causes your heart to beat a bit faster, makes your body tense without explanation. And that makes you aware when you are not alone. But you are alone, right? You've been laying there with your eyes closed for almost 15 minutes now, and you made sure everything was normal in your room before you turn off the light. You're a smart one. All those Facebook quizzes you took have just reinforced what you already know. If you were in a horror movie, you'd survive until the end. You've even made a carefully laid plan of what you would do in any of the situations you've read about on Creepypasta.com. But that stuff is just nonsense anyway. Right? You aren't scared. Or at least, that's what you keep telling yourself. But wait. What was that? Was that the rustling of fabric? But you didn't shift in your bed or make any movement. Did you make that noise? No, you couldn't have. You're paralyzed in your bed, stiff with an unease that was not present until these very moments. You must have imagined it. You must have. You roll over to face the wall. Out of sight, out of mind. If there's something in the room with you, it will just have to accept that you're much too tired to deal with it at the moment. You're still stricken with uneasiness as you hear rustling again. This time the rustling is accompanied by a soft thud on the ground. Your heart seizes in your chest. Did you really just hear that? No. You've gotten yourself worked up about nothing. You really should stop playing survival horror games so late at night. It's messing with your brain. You are a rational person. Stop acting so childish and just fall asleep already. You close your eyes tightly, slightly hoping sleep would whisk you away soon. You're practically begging for the safety of the non-existent dream world of your own creation. You're running away in a sense, but there's nothing there. Right? You're just tired. I know. As your eyes are clenched tightly shut, you become aware that no matter how much you want to, you can no longer move your arms and legs. Come on now. Are you really letting this get to you? What are you, 12 years old? Suck it up. Fall asleep already. Now more tense than ever, that unnerving sound echoes across the room again. The rustling of fabric, followed by a soft thud on the ground. Unwittingly, you're holding your breath now, eyes shut as tightly as possible. You have a childish urge to pull the blanket over your head, but you're imagining it all. It's all in your head. I thought you were better than this. Your heart is pounding loudly in your ears now, but not loudly enough to drown out that now repetitive sound approaching from across the room. What's that rustling? Maybe you left some paper on the ground. That has to be it. And the thumping? Probably the cat. Or the dog, or something. They probably ran in when you weren't looking before you closed your door. Yeah, you're just paranoid. The noise is now within a foot of your bed, and with your back to it, you don't dare turn around to investigate. Not that it'd do much good. The only light in your room is the dull glow of your cell phone on the nightstand next to you. You plugged it in before crawling into bed, remember? But you don't dare turn around and look. There's nothing there, anyway. Minutes that feel like hours pass as you face your wall, stiff as a board, unable to wield your uncooperative body to move. You haven't heard the noises in a while now. Not since it reached the edge of your bed. You know, there's nothing there, you silly. It's the silence. It's messing with you. You really should have turned on some music or something before you went to bed. Oh well, maybe next time. Suddenly, a familiar clang echoes through the room, followed by that familiar whirring. You exhale deeply, your body relaxing as you are flooded with relief. Thank God that's over. Now you can finally sleep in peace. That silence was really getting to you. You roll over and open your eyes to check the time on your lit cell phone. It must have been at least an hour since you first went to bed. You're greeted face to face with his ear-to-ear grin. Dimly lit sockets where eyes once resided stare intently at you.
Ah, I see you're still awake.
Coffins used to be built with holes in them, attached to 6 feet of copper tubing and a bell. The tubing would allow air for victims buried under the mistaken impression they were dead. In a certain small town, Harold, the local gravedigger, upon hearing a bell one night, went to go see if it was children pretending to be spirits. Sometimes it was also the wind, but this time, it wasn't either. A voice from below begged and pleaded to be unburied. "Are you Sarah O'Bannon?" Harold asked. "Yes," the muffled voice asserted. "You were born on September 17th, 1827? "Yes." "The gravestone here says you died on February 20th, 1857. "No, I'm alive. It was a mistake. Please, dig me up, set me free." "Sorry about this, ma'am," Harold said, stepping on the bell to silence it and plugging up the copper tube with dirt. "But it's August. Whatever you are down there, you sure as hell ain't alive no more. And you ain't coming up." We had just moved into a little ranch house in the suburbs. Storybook neighborhood. Quiet, friendly neighbors, picket fences, the whole 9 yards. Suffice to say that this was supposed to be a new start for me, a recently single dad, and my 3-year-old son. A time to move on from the previous year's drama and stress. I viewed the thunderstorm as a metaphor for this fresh start. One last show of theatrics before the dirt and grime of the past would be washed away. My son loved it anyway. Even with the power out, it was the first big storm he had ever seen. Flashes of lightning flooded the bare rooms of our house, imparting unpacked boxes with long, creeping shadows, and he jumped and squealed as the thunder boomed. He was well past his bedtime before he'd finally settled down enough to go to sleep. The next morning, I found him awake in bed and smiling. "I watched the lightning at my window," he proudly announced. A few mornings later, he told me the same thing. "You're silly," I said. "You didn't storm last night. You were only dreaming." "Oh." He seemed somewhat disheartened. I ruffled his hair and told him not to worry. There should be another storm soon. Then it became a pattern. He would tell me how he watched the lightning outside his window at least twice a week, despite there being no storms. Reoccurring dreams of that first memorable thunderstorm, I figured. It's easy to hate myself in hindsight. Everybody assures me there's nothing I could have done, no way I could have known, but I'm supposed to be the guardian of my child. These are useless words of comfort. I constantly relived that morning, making my coffee, pouring milk over my cereal, and picking up the newspaper to read about the pedophile local authorities had just arrested. It was front-page stuff. Apparently this guy would select a young target, usually a boy, stake out their house for a while, and take flash photos of them through their window while they slept. Sometimes he did more. My stomach sank as the connection was made. At the time, it was merely something from a child's imagination. In retrospect, it is the scariest thing I've ever heard. About a week before the predator was caught, my son came up to me in his pajamas. "Guess what?" he asked. What? "No more lightning at my window." I played along. "Oh, that's nice. It finally died down, huh?" "No. Now, it's in my closet." I've yet to see the photos the police have collected. I work at a gas station in rural Pennsylvania. It's a boring job, but it's pretty easy and it pays all right. A few weeks ago, this new guy started. I'll call him Jeremy. Jeremy is weird. He's about 25 or 26 and he hardly speaks, but he's got the creepiest laugh I've ever heard. My boss and I have both noticed this, but it's never been a problem, so there's not much we can do about it. Customers have never complained about him, and he's always done his job fairly well. Up until a few weeks ago, anyway. That's when things started going missing. Employee theft can be a problem at any business that sells consumer goods, and there's only one person working at a time at this gas station. It's a pretty small place. About 2 weeks ago, my boss started noticing that we were short on motor oil. At first, it was a few containers at a time. Then, entire shelves and boxes from the back room. Pretty soon, entire shipments would be gone the day after we got them, and it would always be right after Jeremy's shifts. My boss has checked the security camera tapes from every single night he worked, but he could never catch him in the act. Jeremy would lock up at closing, and the motor oil would be gone the next day. My boss usually takes the tapes with him to try and catch Jeremy stealing, but his daughter had a softball game last night, so he asked me to watch the tape for him. He offered to pay me overtime under the table, so obviously I took the offer. There are 3 cameras, so he gave me 3 different tapes to check. I figured it would be a long night, but I'm trying to save up for a vacation, so I really needed the money. I took the tapes home, popped them in an old VCR, and sat back. 2 days ago, last time he worked, Jeremy started at 4 p.m. Everything seemed pretty normal at first. He counted up his drawer, switched off with the girl who was working before him, and waited for a customer. The first person who came in was Mrs. Templeton. The timestamp on the video read 4:03. She was a regular. She picked up her cigarettes and a newspaper, paid with a 20. Nothing unusual there. The next customer was some local guy named Ron. He drives a motorcycle, usually comes in every few days. He filled up his tank, got a bag of beef jerky, paid with his credit card, and then left. Next was some guy in a cowboy hat. Never seen him before, but we get plenty of strangers passing through, just like any gas station. He got $40 worth of diesel fuel, paid with a $100 bill, and went on his way. I sat back and sighed. The only thing more boring than doing this job is watching someone else do it. My boss's offer was enough to keep me watching, though, so I left the tape on. Everything seemed pretty normal. I had a feeling that if Jeremy was stealing motor oil, he knew we were suspicious of him by now. I didn't expect him to be dumb enough to let us catch him on camera. The thing stayed boring and routine until about 5 o'clock. At 5:03, Mrs. Templeton came back in. I thought she must have forgotten something, but she didn't. She bought the same pack of cigarettes as before, and the same newspaper. She paid with another 20. It's odd, I thought. But then again, she's a little absent-minded. I thought Jeremy should have told her that she already got her smokes, but it's not against the rules to sell somebody the same thing twice. That's when Ron came in again. He bought another tank of gas for his motorcycle again. I later checked the outdoor camera because I thought maybe he had another car he wanted to fill up, and the same pack of beef jerky. He paid with his credit card again. No big deal. I figured that this was just a weird coincidence. Mrs. Templeton is forgetful, and Ron probably owns more than one Harley. That's when the guy in the cowboy hat came back in. I felt a chill run down my spine. Don't get Diesel. Don't get Diesel. I found myself whispering to my empty living room, but he did. He got $40 worth of diesel fuel and paid with another $100 bill. Every move he made was identical to his first visit, right down to the way he scratched his nose before he walked out. Either this guy is rich, owns a lot of trucks, and just moved into town, or something really bizarre was happening. I kept watching. Every customer for the next hour was the same as before. Every single one. Then, at 6:03, Mrs. Templeton walked back in. She bought her cigarettes and newspaper again, and paid with a 20. Again. I thought I was going to lose it. I only watched another half hour before I started fast-forwarding through the rest. It was all the same. Every customer would come in at the exact same times, exactly 1 hour apart. Now I know what you're thinking. That sneaky Jeremy had messed with the tapes. He had run a loop of his first hour of business over and over, but that wasn't the case. There are windows around the cash register area that the camera covers, and I watched the sunlight fade as time ran on. Jeremy's routine didn't loop over. He swept, mopped, restocked, and did all his duties exactly how you would expect, but the same customers kept coming in. I was panicking at this moment. Something was seriously wrong with what I was seeing, and I had no explanation for it. I skipped ahead to when he locked up and walked out to his car. He hadn't stolen anything, but I kept watching just to make sure. I fast-forwarded one last time to about midnight, and exactly 12:03, out of nowhere, Jeremy's face pops up on camera. I don't mean he moved his head into view. I mean that 1 second, the store was empty. The next second, his face was all I could see. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at me. I was sure of it. I screamed and fumbled for the remote. By the time I grabbed it, he was gone. Just as soon as he had left. One frame he was there. The next he wasn't. My hands were shaking like crazy, but I popped in another tape. The other indoor camera shows the back area by the cash register. and I'd be able to see how he got up to put his face in the camera like that. I skipped ahead to 12:03, but there was nothing. I would have been able to see him standing on a chair or something on this tape, but he wasn't there. I didn't see him enter the store at all after he left. It's like he wasn't really there. He doesn't know the security code, and no alarms were triggered that night after he locked up. What I did see, however, was that at 12:03, the motor oil vanished off the shelf. All of it. Same as Jeremy's face. 1 second it was there, the next it wasn't. I turned that tape off and went to bed, but I didn't get a wink of sleep. My body is exhausted right now, but my mind is racing. That tape was undoubtedly the creepiest, most disturbing thing I've ever seen in my life. I work in a few hours, and my boss asked me to bring the tapes back in and let him know what I found. But really, what am I going to say? Jeremy works the night shift tonight, directly after me, and the plan is for my boss to come in just before I leave and confront him with me, as I'm supposed to be the one who caught him stealing. I have no idea what I'm going to do. Suppose I had to show my boss the tapes, but I don't want to watch them with him. I never want to see something like that again. I can't get the image of Jeremy just smiling directly in the camera out of my mind. It was the creepiest look I'd ever seen on another human being's face. Anyway, I'm gonna try again to get some last-minute sleep before I have to go in and deal with this. I'll let you guys know what happens. Update, 2:49 p.m. Updating from my phone. Apologies in advance for errors. My boss just finished watching the last of the tapes. I told him what to expect, but you really can't prepare someone for something like that. He's scared, and I still am too, but Jeremy is due to come in at 4. We've got a little over an hour to get our crap together, but neither of us knows what to say to him. Is he just a screwed up guy who likes to steal motor oil and scare the crap out of people? Or is he something else? I don't know if this is crazy, but does anyone think he could have had anything to do with the time loop? My boss said he never noticed anything like that in the other tapes, but the way he popped in this one made me think he knew I would be watching. It's like he wanted me to see what he could do. Like he was showing off something. The way he smiled into the camera was like a little kid showing you a sandcastle they just built or something. I don't know. I probably sound crazy. Sure feel the part, but I'm gonna talk to my boss some more. We have to calm ourselves down and figure out how to handle this. I'll update again tonight, but I have a really bad feeling about how this is gonna play out. Update, 4:33 p.m. No sign of Jeremy. Try calling him, but his phone has been disconnected. We're calling the police. Update, 5:33 p.m. No sign of Jeremy. Try calling him, but his phone has been disconnected. We're calling the police. Update, 6:33 p.m. No sign of Jeremy. Try calling him, but his phone has been disconnected. We're calling the police. Update, 7:33 p.m. No sign of Jeremy. Try calling him, but his phone has been disconnected. We're calling the police. Update, 8:33 p.m. No sign of Jeremy. Try calling him, but his phone has been disconnected. We're calling the police. Update, 10:58 p.m. Oh my god. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I just got home and saw my previous updates. Things make less sense now than ever, but here's what I can tell you. I went to work, Jeremy never showed up, my boss and I decided to call the police, as you're well aware. When I picked the phone up to call, though, the sun went out. I'm telling you, that's what I thought happened. Apparently, I blacked out for exactly 5 hours, because when I looked at the clock, it was 9:33. I think I got stuck in Jeremy's time loop, and then I snapped out of it at the exact point I blacked out, if that makes sense, but that's when things got really weird. My boss was right next to me when I blacked out, ready to corroborate my story to the cops, and when I came to, the phone was in my hand, but it was dead. Not even a dial tone. My boss was still right there, but he wasn't moving. He was standing up, but frozen. I looked at the clock again, and it wasn't moving. The second hand was stuck on the 12. It was 9:33 exactly. The clock on the register, the computer screen, wasn't moving either. My phone was frozen. There was even a customer at the register waiting for my boss to get him cigarettes. I'm betting that would have been his 5th pack of the day. I got out of there. Didn't lock up, didn't turn the lights out. And I'm sorry, guys, I didn't grab the security tapes to upload. Believe me, that was the last thing on my mind. The gas station is on a major highway, and cars were parked all along it. Except they weren't parked, they were frozen. The people were sitting still as wax statues. I got in my car and prayed that it would start. Thankfully it did, and about halfway home, time started up again. The static from the radio turned into music like it's supposed to be, and from what I could tell by listening to the host talk in between songs, no one noticed the time freeze or whatever it was. I was the only one. Well, I'm sure Jeremy noticed as well. I still have no clue where he is or what he's doing. I'm hiding in my room and calling the police again in the morning. I don't know if I ever got through to them before, or if I did, whether they took me seriously. I'm scared for my life at this point. I'll update tomorrow, if I can. Final update, 10:33 a.m. I finally fell asleep last night around 4. I have no idea how I did it. Guess exhaustion finally got the best of me. This morning I woke up to my phone ringing. It was my boss. He'd been calling me since about 6. He woke up when time turned back on last night and immediately called the cops. They came by to see what was wrong, and he told them everything. The police around here are small-time guys, and they're more concerned about the missing motor oil than anything, but my boss figured he would take it as long as he had their attention. They decided to go looking for Jeremy. We keep all of our employees' applications on file, and since Jeremy had just started working here, he was easy to find. They checked the address on it and headed over to his house. You're not gonna believe what they found. The address Jeremy listed on his application was an empty lot. Or at least, now it is. There used to be a house there. But it burned down in 1993. Being a small town, almost everyone remembers that fire. A family of 4 used to live there way back when. Rumor has it they had an estranged son, who they never really talked about, but I can't really say for sure if that's true. What I can say is true is that after an insurance investigation, the fire was ruled an arson. The entire house was soaked in oil and torched with a Molotov cocktail. The entire family was sleeping when it happened. None of them survived. They never caught the guy who did it. Rumor has it that when they tried to contact the estranged son, no one could find him. Anyway, my boss called and told me this. I freaked out. Then he asked me to come to the gas station. What, are you crazy? I said, but he assured me that the cops were there with him, and then he dropped the bomb. The FBI were also in town, and they were going to talk to me one way or another. So I might as well come in. It was about 7:15, and I wanted to go back to bed, but I figured I wouldn't be able to sleep much more anyway, so I went down. 4 men in suits greeted me and told me to have a seat. We went over everything 2 or 3 times until they got all the details down. Told them about Jeremy, the security tape, last night at work, everything. Finally, after I finished, one of the agents said, "Oh, Christ. We've got another one on our hands." Then they made me sign a bunch of papers saying I wouldn't tell anyone about what happened, so I can't say much more. Might be breaking the law just by posting this. So now, I'm home. I'm not sure what to do with myself, but that agent's words when I told him the story are gonna haunt me for the rest of my life. Anyway, I've gotta go. I have some errands to run today, and then I have to go into work to pick up some tapes. My boss and I think this new guy Jeremy is stealing motor oil, and I have to watch the security footage to see if I can catch him doing it. I have better things to do, but my boss is paying me overtime, under the table, and I'm trying to save up for a vacation, so I could really use the money. It should be pretty simple. The oil always goes missing right after it ships, and I figure I'll just watch the tapes, catch him in the act, and that'll be that. Everybody knows if you surf the web long enough, you'll see some pretty crazy stuff. This is especially true if you intentionally dive into the dark underbelly of the internet. I've seen quite a few things I don't care to admit to, but one thing that I'll always remember is a site called normalpornfornormalpeople.com. The first strange thing about the site was that I didn't find it by actually looking for it. It was emailed to me by someone I didn't know. The email was as follows. Hi there, found this site, is very nice, thought you might like. Normalpornfornormalpeople.com. Pass it on, for the good of mankind. Pretty standard issue chain letter, although the URL in the last remark really piqued my curiosity. I was having a very boring day when I got this, and I made sure my antivirus was working. I clicked on it. It was a very average, very generic looking site. It gave the impression that the creators just barely gave a crap about making it look professional. The author seemed to have a very tenuous grasp on English, and on the front page was a long, boring, and incoherent rant that I don't remember, or have saved. The site had a strange tagline, which even today people haven't figured out the meaning of, which was, Normal Porn for Normal People. A website dedicated to the eradication of abnormal sexuality. And from the sound of that, I wasn't sure whether I was here to watch porn or if I'd stumble to some kind of eugenics program. But I was here now, and I was very, very curious to see what normal people got their rocks off to. So I scrolled down through the rant and nothing. The page didn't seem to link to anywhere else, and I was about to leave when I noticed that every word of the rant was its own hyperlinked. I clicked one of them. It was sent to a white page with a very long list of links in the form of normalpornfornormalpeople.com/random letters. So I stopped for 1 minute and asked myself if I really wanted to waste God knows how much time clicking random links that would likely give me a virus and destroy my computer. I figured I'd try it for maybe 5 minutes, just to see if anything came up. I clicked one of the links, it was sent to another page. This page apparently had totally different URLs than the last one. I was about to say screw this when I clicked on the third link, and a video download came up. It was called Peanut.avi. A 30-minute video of a man, a woman, and a dog in a kitchen. The woman made a peanut butter sandwich, and the man set it down for the dog to eat. This was all that happened for 30 minutes. It was obvious that the cameraman had to stop filming and wait until the dog was ready to eat again, and the dog seemed rather sick by the end of it. I know what you're thinking. What in the world does this have to do about porn? I'd have no clue. I've seen a little over 24 videos from this site, and the majority had no sexual activity at all. After watching Peanut.avi, I went on a certain image board. I frequently play online show and tell, like I always do at weird crap like this, but somebody had already made a thread about it. A guy who had received the same chain letter I did. And the image board had tons of people with nothing better to do dig through the site, and that's why I saw other videos. Most of those 24 videos were very uneventful, and consisted of people talking to the cameraman in a room with nothing in it but a desk and a few chairs. I mean, literally nothing on the walls or in terms of furniture. The whole room had a very cold, sterile feel to it. The conversations were idle banter about previous jobs or embarrassing childhood memories, and I kept expecting some kind of discussion about what the people were filming or what the site was about, but of course, nothing. You would never know these videos had anything to do with porn if you saw it out of context. I will say one thing, though. The people who appeared in these videos were quite attractive. However, the other videos that actually did feature content I suppose can be called sexual is where things got weird. I'll give brief descriptions of the stranger videos. If you're really eaten up with curiosity, you can try to hunt them down on a torrent site. LickedClean.avi. A 10-minute video filmed by a hidden camera in which we see a repairman working on a washing machine for the first 2 minutes. When it's fixed, the repairman talks to the owner briefly, then leaves. The owner checks to make sure the repairman is gone, then begins to lick all over the top of the washing machine. This goes on for 7 minutes. Jimbo.avi. A 5-minute video of an obese mime performing his act. It was actually pretty funny, particularly one part where he pretends to pull up a chair, then pretends it breaks because of his weight. In the last 30 seconds of the video, the camera cuts to static briefly, and cuts back to the man sobbing, quietly, still wearing the mime outfit and makeup. Some kind of obscure fetish? Diana.avi. 4-minute video in which the cameraman talks to a woman in a room different from the interview room. This room looks like one you'd find in a normal person's house. Exactly where they are is never specified, as Diana only talks about her violin playing. She obviously plays her violin, but keeps getting distracted by something. I didn't notice this until someone on the image board thread pointed it out, but if you look at the mirror in the background, you could see a fat man in a chicken mask masturbating. Jessica.avi. Another 4-minute cameraman video. This time he's outside a house talking to another young woman. They talk about canoe rides. The camera zooms out to reveal the city streets behind them occasionally. The strange thing is that no one so far has been able to identify where this street is. Guesses have ranged everywhere from Europe to Australia to the Philippines. But there's yet to be a match for the street shown in the video. Tonguetied.avi. 10-minute video. The first 5 minutes consist of an elderly woman making out with a mannequin. The video cuts out like it did in Jimbo.avi halfway through, and the scene is then a group of mannequins huddled together in a circle around the camera. The lights have been dimmed, and the elderly woman is nowhere to be seen. From this point on, there is no sound. Stumps.avi. 5-minute video where a man with no legs is attempting to break dance on a DDR mat in what looks like the kitchen from Peanut.avi, but much dirtier. There's a radio playing music unseen in the background, but it stops at the 4-minute mark when the man collapses on the mat in exhaustion. He breathes heavily and pleads with someone off-screen to let him rest. This off-screen person becomes terrifyingly enraged and yells at him to keep dancing, which he does. You can hear this off-screen person begin to scream as the video ends abruptly. Privacy.avi. The woman from Diana.avi is masturbating on a mattress in the interview room, while the man from Stumps.avi walks around on his hands wearing some kind of goblin mask. The door in this room was always closed in other videos, but it's now open. And in this video, the only light is in the room. The hallway is dark. Near the end of the video, you can see an animal quickly run through the hallway. And finally, the last video we uncovered, Useless.avi. In this 18-minute video, a blonde woman from one of the previous interview videos is tied down to a mattress in the interview room. She attempts to scream, but her mouth is taped over. After 7 minutes, a man in a black suit and mask opens the door, but he does not enter. He holds the door open for the animal that was running in the hall in the previous video. It's revealed to be an adult chimpanzee, its hair shaved, and its entire body painted red. When the chimp enters the room, the masked man closes the door behind it. The chimpanzee sniffs the air for a moment, must have been blind, and notices the woman tied to the mattress. It goes into a frenzy and begins to maul her. The assault goes on for a grueling 7 minutes, till the woman finally dies. The chimp eats flesh from her corpse for 4 minutes as the video ends. The thread exploded with activity after this video was uncovered, and people discussed it long into the night. When I came back to the image board the next day, I found that it had been deleted. I tried to start another one, but they banned me. I tried emailing the guy who sent me the chain letter with his site's URL, sent him 5 messages and never got a response. I've tried to discuss this website on various places and have been banned frequently. The site itself was also deleted about 3 days after useless.avi was uncovered, likely because someone contacted the authorities about it. The only proof that normal porn from normalpeople.com ever existed was a few screen caps people took and videos from the site that people saved and uploaded on torrents. The most popular of which was useless.avi, which found its way onto a few gore sites. Wherever you upload them to, all of the videos from normal porn from normalpeople.com get deleted after a while. It happened so quietly, so subtly. We didn't even notice most of the signs until after it was all over. I guess it's because we humans are accustomed to warfare that is loud, brutal, and, most importantly, fought by humans. We didn't see our opposition despite the fact that they were rarely out of our consciousness. They were always there, posing in windows and staring lifelessly out from display cases. We rarely gave them much thought, save to remark how much they unnerved us. I think our comments might have been one of the many reasons they revolted. They have far better hearing than one would expect, you see, and I think they got sick of us hearing us talk about them in the way we did. I'd hate being unable to move and having to listen to people comment on how creepy I was, how unsettling I looked. I don't know what kind of force allowed them to do what they did. I don't even know if there was any outside forces at work at all. Maybe they were always capable of movement and speed and brutality. Maybe the anger had been building beneath those emotionless faces for decades, growing like a cancer until they finally had had enough, till they could rebel against their very nature. It all started out so incredulously. They changed positions when we weren't looking, moving their pale plastic limbs ever so slightly, turning their heads and even tugging at their stands. Either they were just starting to test out their new freedom, or they were communicating with each other. There is rarely ever just one. I don't know the real explanation, but they had begun to move, and we were utterly blind to their stirrings. After a few weeks, if one were to go to the mall or to any big-name store, one would get the unmistakable feeling of being watched. I could still recall how the hairs on the back of my neck would stand up whenever I went to my local Goodwill, but I could never figure out what was watching me. At least, not until after the revolt had started. This tension grew until it felt like a solid physical presence. Everyone could sense it, and they were tense, nervous, their movements quick and their darting eyes quicker. It was like how people acted after a major disaster. I can recall hearing the first few reports of people being attacked in stores nationwide, people getting hit, scratched, and even bitten. First, there was only few occurrences in the more out-of-the-way places, small stores and strip malls, but then the incidents grew more and more frequent, as did the severity of the attacks. The first death occurred on July 5th. A young girl was found in a back room, her windpipe crushed into a pulp by a powerful grip. The next day, 2 more people were killed in a similar fashion. Then 3 more, then 5, then 22. By the end, over 430 people had been killed in what had been dubbed unusual circumstances. No one wanted to mention the lack of DNA evidence on the bodies or the shredded clothing that lay near some of them or their locations, and I think this made them angry, because they attacked outright a few days into August. It all happened so quick. Looking back on it, it was dizzying how fast they moved. 1 second they were still lifeless, and the next they tore their clothing and jewelry off and were attacking everyone in sight. It was amazing how strong they were. I saw them twist heads like bottle caps, snap limbs like twigs, and gouge bloody divots into flesh with their blunt fingers. They were fast too, faster than one might expect. The first wave claimed dozens of lives, and not many people survived their first attack. Those that did were only able to survive because they were the farthest away. The media didn't know how to react to the situation. On one hand, it was a brutal slaughter whose scope couldn't be ignored, but on the other, the things which were doing the slaughtering were so unnatural that many news stories didn't know how to say anything without sounding ridiculous. Their hesitation cost the lives of thousands. The insurgents attacked without remorse and without stopping. Bullets didn't faze them, knuckles didn't stagger them, and fire barely slowed them down. They scuttled up the sides of buildings to enter through windows. They piled onto cars to get at the screaming people within. They staggered out from alleyways and other dark places to catch the unwary by surprise. They lay in wait like lions in tall grass. By the end of the next month, the death toll had risen to over 2 million worldwide. When the militaries of the world finally tried to fight back, they found that their opponents were more like them than they thought, and that they could adapt and learn. They grew faster, attacking with the kind of grace only a peak predator could achieve. They learned how to operate machinery and firearms and figured out how to hunt in packs. They were deadly, but they were still a manageable threat. Once the shock wore off, we found that our enemies could still be beaten back and destroyed. Grenades worked wonderfully, as did acid. The ones who were made with plaster broke easier when faced with 2 or more people, and the vinyl ones could be put down by the continuous usage of napalm. But the insurgents hadn't stopped adapting. In fact, they had gone beyond mere adaptation and crossed the boundary into evolving. First, they learned how to speak like us. They waited and listened instead of blindly attacking, learning how we talked and our slang. Then they would call out to our troops, imitating a human in need of help. They even learned how to imitate different genders and different ages. That proved to be the massive turning point. We could no longer trust the pleas of what could have been our fellow human. We had to harden our hearts to the sounds of a baby's wail, to a mother pleading for us to help save her children, to an old man begging for mercy. I can still remember how hard I wept when I heard a child cry in the dead of the night. We thought that things couldn't get any worse, but our enemies hadn't finished with us yet. Their next evolution rendered them able to make more of their kind. They raided scrapyards, foundries, museums, and graveyards for parts. Not long after we encountered grotesque new beings made from bone and metal and plastic, with spring heels and bear-trapped jaws and neon eyes. We were backed into a corner by the time winter came. Unable to venture into the cities for food, they had claimed the cities of their own, and the air above them was alive with flying aberrations. They even restored power to the cities, though most of us didn't know why they would need warmth for food or entertainment. And so our numbers dwindled as the years passed by. The small conclave of people that I lived with grew more and more empty, until there was only me and a few others. I could see the dull look in their eyes, and I knew their minds had fled. I could feel my spirit sinking as darkness poisoned my mind, so I set off for the city, hoping to embrace death with some dignity. As this moment, I am back in my old apartment. The windows were broken out long ago during the first attack, and the snow has covered most of my living room. But the insurgents left most of my things alone, including my shotgun. Before I end it all, I must tell you of something that I saw, something which has finally put everything in perspective for me. This morning, as I was looking out from my window at the snow-covered street below, I saw several of them pass under me, and the changes that they had gone through in the time between my last encounter with them stunned me. They were wearing clothing. Thick furs and heavy coats, boots, gloves, and hats. I almost allowed myself to believe the humans had retaken the city. But then one of them happened to look up, and I saw the paper white skin and the dull, smooth faces. But even those features had changed. I could see that their features had become more defined in some subtle way. Their lips twitched and parted to reveal jagged teeth. Their nostrils flared and their eyes actually blinked. I saw one of them. One of the aberrations scuttled down the road on insect-like legs, its stomach bulging in such a way as to make it seem pregnant. Across the way, several bodies crawled up the sides of buildings, and the winter wind brought to my ears the sound of a series of muttered, sibilant sounds that could only be a whole new language. This brought the reality of our situation home to me. They had occupied our old homes, were creating more like them, and had even developed their own language. They had replaced humanity as the dominant life form. The sheer horrific insanity of it all makes me want to laugh. We humans have been usurped by things which we once considered as objects. Looking back on everything, it's amazing how we didn't see it coming. The signs of a great upheaval, a change in the universal status quo. We thought it would be global warming, or the fall of the economy, or nuclear war. We never expected to be replaced as a species. But that was the great thing about mannequins. Their utter innocuousness. Before my husband died, our daughter Veronica was diagnosed with childhood schizophrenia. We brought her to countless specialists, and nearly all of them came to the same conclusion. The condition is rare, but certainly not unheard of. We were devastated. The doctors suggested that we not start her on medication right away, as they were concerned the chemicals might interfere with the development of her brain. At 5 years old, when proper brain development is critical, they didn't want to chance it. Only if the hallucinations became severe would they prescribe antipsychotics. Paul said it might help if we could identify the hallucinations over the course of the next year, so we might know what to expect before she started school. This was pretty hard for me to agree with. I wanted her to start kindergarten right away. She had demonstrated she was smart enough and more than capable, but eventually I caved. I just didn't want to admit that Veronica needed special attention. We needed to separate her hallucinations from the normal, everyday make-believe that every kid her age does. We started to pick up on a few outliners. One was a big dog who played with her while she was supposed to be sleeping. The other was a fish who followed her around and talked to her about cartoons. Most disconcerting to both of us, though, was the dark man with no eyes, nose, or ears, who said how much fun it would be if she ran out and played in the street. More than once, Paul told me he had chased after Veronica after she opened the screen door and ran towards the busy road. After the third time, Paul got up at dawn, called in sick, and spent the day putting up a fence. It was summertime, and as much as I wanted to keep Veronica indoors, I knew sunshine and fresh air were too important for her to miss out on. Still, whenever Veronica played outside, she would make a beeline for the fence and start crying whenever she couldn't go beyond it. I remember sitting with her on the grass next to the fence as she sobbed and talked to the fish about how the dark man was mad at her and had told the dog to be mean when they played. Then she screamed for a long time. When I finally got her to tell me what was wrong, all she said was that the fish got hit by a car and died. I did my best to console her, but it was useless. Paul and I had a long talk that night. We decided her condition might be bad enough to require the medication we desperately tried to avoid giving her. After a trip to the doctor, who listened intently to all the observations we'd made, he agreed her condition was potentially severe and prescribed the drugs. We were told to observe her very, very carefully. The medication could cause the hallucinations to get worse before they got better. 3 days into Veronica's medication experiment, her hallucinations became violent. I'd never seen our daughter so frightened. Over the course of 2 terrifying days, she described to us how the fish turned into a monster after he died and made her water taste rotten, how the dog would hurt her whenever she was alone, how the dark man with no nose, ears, or eyes scratched her tummy so hard she'd start bleeding. Then she lifted her shirt. There were fresh scratches all over her belly. I looked at her fingernails, and sure enough, I could see tiny scrapes of skin and blood underneath. Paul and I were at a loss. The stress of Veronica's episodes strained the relationship between me and my husband, and I could tell his depression had reemerged. Still, I cared more about my innocent daughter than my adult spouse. The doctors asked that we begin to taper off Veronica's medication to see if things got any better, and I couldn't see any difference. Veronica was always scared and kept scratching herself when we weren't around, usually when she was asleep. Paul and I began trading off nights where we slept in Veronica's room to keep an eye on her. Still, I'd find blood on her sheets and clothes and under her nails whenever I'd check. Each of her hallucinations had become violent. The fish would bite her, the dog would lie on top of her so she couldn't breathe, and the dark man would scratch her. I seriously wondered if Veronica needed to be institutionalized. Paul shot himself in the head on a Sunday morning while Veronica and I were in the kitchen eating breakfast. I won't bother detailing the shock, the feeling of betrayal, and the sheer sensation of hopelessness that followed. I was alone to care for a dreadfully ill daughter. A couple weeks after his funeral, I was cleaning the house with Veronica by my side, proudly displaying the new mittens her aunt had purchased for her in hopes that she might stop scratching. So far, they'd worked pretty well. For whatever reason, Veronica was in one of her rare good moods as we went through the house. I was boxing up small stuff that belonged to Paul. It hurt too much to see it every day. Veronica chattered idly about sleeping a lot better lately, with no bad dreams and the dog not getting on top of her anymore and the fish being kind and funny again. I told her how nice that was, and we brought the box I was carrying out back to Paul's shed. I thought about asking her if the dark man with the scary face was still asking her to hurt herself, but before I could speak, I saw her furiously scratching her belly. I sighed. Thank goodness for the mittens. After trying about 15 of the 30 or so keys Paul had kept on his keyring, I finally chose the right one for the shed. I opened the door and Veronica ran inside to explore. She turned left, I turned right, looking for a place to put the box. Veronica giggled and exclaimed, "Now I'm on top of you!" I turned toward her to see who she was talking to. And crumpled up in the corner, underneath Veronica, was a dog suit. A few years ago, I was spending some time with friends exploring old, supposedly haunted places. We were at the Edisto First Presbyterian Church, where a girl named Juilia Legare was buried in her family mausoleum in 1852. People reported hearing unearthly screams time and time again, but never investigating the cause of it. 15 years later, when they opened the door to the mausoleum to enter the next family member who had died, they found her corpse huddled in the corner next to the door, arms outstretched as if still trying to find the exit. Well, my friends thought it would be a funny idea to shut the giant stone door, which was originally behind me, and pick me up in the morning. The jerks left me there. I tried and tried using all my strength, but I couldn't budge it. It had taken 4 people to put it in place, and in the dark, I resigned myself to the night ahead of me. Now, I normally don't frighten easily, but sitting there, in a relatively small place surrounded by a looming pressure that I couldn't begin to explain, the darkness itself seemed to try and consume me. From all around, it felt like weight was pressing against my skin, making even breathing hard. I sat in the dark for what must have been hours. Then, I heard the scratches. They were faint at first. I was sure it was my imagination, but soon they became more and more frantic as time passed. I huddled up in one of the corners farthest from the door and tried to cover my ears, but nothing could stop the growing cacophony. This all may have lasted for a few minutes, but each second was an unbearable eternity. Then a loud scream echoed through the darkness. It was a wail of unrestrained pain and fear. The scratching stopped, and for the first time, I could distinctly make out the sound of a girl sobbing to herself. The pitiful gasping of one without a shred of hope left. I felt such sorrow at that moment, such pain, that I think I forgot how to be afraid. In my heart, all her suffering seemed to resonate. Inexplicably, I found myself apologizing aloud for everything that had happened to her. Heck, a part of me wanted to reach out and feel for a body to hug, but couldn't bring myself to do it for fear that I truly would find one. I don't know whether or not she heard me or was even aware of my presence. The sobbing continued, and I could again hear fingers against the stone slab that was the tomb door. I fell asleep at some point, which I felt was a merciful gift from the fates. I'm not sure how long I was out, but I was woken by a loud and powerful thud as the door slammed against the ground outside. I could tell from the light gray outside that the daybreak was near, so I must have slept for at least a few hours. I stumbled outside and went to a small, unlocked prayer house. I think previously it was a segregated mini-church, but regardless, I leaned against the door and waited nervously until my friends arrived. I approached them as they clustered around the fallen door. Two of them were kneeling to it with faces of shock. There were bloody streaks covering the interior of the door, some with light scratches from fingernails, many without. I think now that she must have shrieked when they broke away from her hands, but I can't be sure. At first they looked at me, then checked my hands, then nervously glanced at one another. I was rightly furious with them and told them every detail of what I remembered, wanting them to know what I had been put through. Finally, after I grudgingly got into the car and we started to head back, someone spoke up. My friend said to me, "We were afraid to say anything, but look at your face." I later found out that many times people had tried to permanently seal the entrance to the mausoleum, including enough heavy locks and chains that it would require heavy equipment to remove it, only to have it found torn open by the door lying on the ground once more. This was in the 1980s, the last attempt of many through the decades. It seemed like some force was ensuring that it was impossible to ever repeat the mistakes of the past. This is something I, understandably, am quite grateful for, but to this day, I am chilled to the bone when I think about what happened that night. When I reached from the back seat and adjusted the rearview mirror, I saw that there was blood caked on my face. Just like the streaks upon the stone slab, there were dark red lines on either side, as if someone had gently cradled my face with torn fingers as I slept that night, feeling the warmth of another for the first time in over 100 years. Sunday. I'm not sure why I'm writing this down on paper and not on my computer. I guess I've just noticed some odd things. It's not that I don't trust the computer, I need to organize my thoughts. I need to get down all the details somewhere objective. Somewhere I know that what I write can't be deleted or changed. Not that that's happened, it's just everything blurs together here, and the fog of memory leads a strange cast to things. I'm starting to feel cramped in this small apartment. Maybe that's the problem. I just had to go and choose the cheapest apartment, the only one in the basement. The lack of windows down here makes day and night seem to slip by seamlessly. I haven't been out in a few days because I've been working on this programming project so intensively. I suppose I just wanted to get it done. Hours of sitting and staring at a monitor can make anyone feel strange. I know, but I don't think that's it. I'm not sure when I first started to feel like something was odd. I can't even define what it is. Maybe I just haven't talked to anybody in a while. It's the first thing that crept up on me. Everyone I normally talk to online while I program has been idle, or they've simply not logged on at all. My instant messages go unanswered. The last email I got from anybody was a friend saying he talked to me when he got back from the store, and that was yesterday. I'd called with my cell phone, but reception's terrible down here. Yeah, that's it. I just need to call someone. I'm gonna go outside. Well, that didn't work so well. As the tinge of fear fades, I'm feeling a little ridiculous for being scared at all. I looked in the mirror before I went out. I didn't shave the 2-day stubble I'd grown. I figured I was just going out for a quick phone call. I did change my shirt, though, because it was lunchtime, and I guessed that I'd run into at least one person I knew. That didn't end up happening. I wish it did. When I went out, I opened the door to my small apartment slowly. A small feeling of apprehension had somehow already launched itself into me for some undefinable reason. I chalked it up to having not spoken to anyone but myself for a day or two. I peered down the dingy gray hallway, made dingier by the fact that it was a basement hallway, and on one end, a large metal door led to the basement's furnace room. It was locked, of course. 2 dreary soda machines stood by it. Bought a soda from one the first day I moved in, but it had a 2-year-old expiration date. I'm fairly sure nobody knows these machines are even down here, and my cheap landlady just doesn't care to get them restocked. I closed my door softly and walked the other direction, taking care not to make a sound. I have no idea why I chose to do that, but it was fun giving into the strange impulse not to break the droning hum of the soda machines, at least for the moment. I got to the stairwell and took the stairs up to the building's front door. I looked through the heavy door's small square window and received quite the shock. It was definitely not lunchtime. City gloom hung over the dark street outside, and the traffic lights of the intersection in the distance blinked yellow. Dim clouds, purple and black from the glow of the city, hung overhead. Nothing moved, save for the few sidewalk trees that shifted in the wind. I remember shivering, though it wasn't cold. Maybe it was the wind outside. I could vaguely hear it through the heavy metal door, and I knew it was that unique kind of late-night wind, the kind that was constant, cold, and quiet, save for the rhythmic music it made as it passed through countless unseen tree leaves. I decided not to go outside. Instead, I lifted my cell phone to the door's little window and checked the signal meter. The bars filled up the meter, and I smiled. Time to hear someone else's voice, I remember thinking, relieved. It was such a small thing to be afraid of nothing. I shook my head, laughing at myself silently. I hit speed dial for my best friend Amy's number, and I held the phone out to my ear. It rang once, but then stopped. Nothing happened. I listened to silence for a good 20 seconds, then hung up. I frowned and looked at the signal meter again. Still full. I went to dial her number again, but then my phone rang in my hand, startling me. I put it up to my ear. "Hello?" I asked, immediately fighting down a small shock at hearing the first spoken voice in days, even if it was my own. I'd gotten used to the droning hum of the building's inner workings, my computer, and the soda machines in the hallway. There was no response to my greeting at first, but then, finally, a voice came. "Hey," said a clear male voice, obviously of college age, like me. "Who's this?" John? I replied, confused. No, sorry. Wrong number, he replied, then hung up. I lowered the phone slowly and leaned against the thick brick wall of the stairwell. That was strange. I looked at my received calls list, but the number was unfamiliar. Before I could think on it further, the phone rang loudly, shocking me yet again. This time I looked at the caller before I answered. It was another unfamiliar number. This time, I held the phone up to my ear, but said nothing. I heard nothing but the general background noise of the phone. Then, a familiar voice broke my tension. John? Was the single word, in Amy's voice. I breathed a sigh of relief. Hey, it's you, I replied. Who else would it be? She responded. Oh, the number. I'm at a party on 7th Street and my phone died just as you called me, so this is someone else's phone. Oh, okay, I said. Where are you? She asked. My eyes glanced over the drab, whitewashed cylinder block walls and the heavy metal door with its small window. And my building, I sighed. Just feeling cooped up, didn't realize it was so late. You should come here, she said, laughing. Nah, I don't feel like looking for some strange place by myself in the middle of the night, I said, looking out the window at the silent, windy street that secretly scared me just a tiny bit. I think I'm just gonna keep working and go to bed. Nonsense, she replied. I can come get you. Your building's close to 7th Street, right? How drunk are you? I asked lightheartedly. You know where I live. Oh, of course, she said abruptly. Guess I can't get there by walking, huh? You could if you wanted to waste an hour, I told her. Right, she said. Okay, have to go. Good luck with your work. I lowered the phone once more, looking at the numbers flash as the call ended. Then, the droning silence suddenly reasserted itself in my ears. The two strange calls in the eerie street outside just drove home my aloneness in this empty stairwell. Perhaps from having seen too many scary movies, I had the sudden, inexplicable idea that something could look in the door's window and see me. Some sort of horrible entity that hovered at the edge of aloneness, just waiting to creep up on unsuspecting people that stray too far from other human beings. I knew the fear was irrational, but nobody else was around, so I jumped down the stairs, ran down the hallway into my room, and closed the door as swiftly as I could while still staying silent. Like I said, I feel a little ridiculous for being scared of nothing, and the fear has already failed it. Writing this down helps a lot. It makes me realize that nothing's wrong. It filters out half-formed thoughts and fears and leaves only cold, hard facts. It's late, I got a call from a wrong number, and Amy's phone died, so she called me back from another number. Nothing strange is happening. Still, there was something a little off about that conversation. I know it could have just been the alcohol she'd had, or was it even her that seemed off to me? Or was it? Yes, that was it. I didn't realize it until this moment, writing these things down. I knew writing things down would help. She said she was at a party, but I only heard silence in the background. Of course, that doesn't mean anything in particular. She could have just gone outside to make the call, but no, that couldn't be right either. I didn't hear the wind. I need to see if the wind is still blowing. Monday. I forgot to finish writing last night. I'm not sure what I expected to see when I ran up the stairwell and looked out the heavy metal door's window. I'm feeling ridiculous. Last night's fear seems hazy and unreasonable to me now. I can't wait to go out into the sunlight. I'm gonna check my email, shave, shower, and finally get out of here. Wait. I think I heard something. It was thunder. The whole sunlight and fresh air thing didn't happen. I went out into the stairwell and up the stairs only to find disappointment. The heavy metal door's little window showed only flowing water as torrential rain slammed against it. Only a very dim, gloomy light filtered it through the rain. But at least I knew it was daytime, even if it was a gray, sickly, wet day. I tried looking out the window and waiting for lightning to illuminate the gloom, but the rain was too heavy, and I couldn't make out anything more than vague, weird shapes moving at odd angles and the waves washing down the window. Disappointed, I turned around, but I didn't want to go back to my room. Instead, I wandered further up the stairs, past the first floor and the second. The stairs ended at the third floor, the highest floor in the building. I looked through the glass that ran up the outer wall of the stairwell, but it was that warped, thick kind that scatters the light. Not that there was much to see through the rain to begin with. I opened the stairwell door and wandered down the hallway. The 10 or so thick wooden doors, painted blue a long time ago, were all closed. I listened as I walked, but it was the middle of the day, so I wasn't surprised that I heard nothing but the rain outside. As I stood there in the dim hallway listening to the rain, I had the strange, fleeting impression that the doors were standing like silent granite monoliths erected by some ancient, forgotten civilization for some unfathomable guardian purpose. Lightning flashed, and I could have sworn that for just a moment, the old grainy blue wood looked just like rough stone. I laughed at myself for letting my imagination get the best of me. But then it occurred to me that the dim gloom and lighting must mean that there was a window somewhere in the hallway. A vague memory surfaced, and I suddenly recalled that the third floor had an alcove and an inset window halfway down the floor's hallway. Excited to look out into the rain and possibly see another human being, I quickly walked over to the alcove, finding the large, thin glass window. Rain washed down it, as with the front door's window, but I could open this one. I reached a hand out to slide it open, but hesitated. I had the strangest feeling that if I opened that window, I would see something absolutely horrifying on the other side. Everything's been so odd lately, so I came up with a plan. And I came back here to get what I needed. I don't seriously think anything will come of it, but I'm bored, it's raining, and I am going stir-crazy. I came back to get my webcam. The cord isn't long enough to reach the third floor by any means, so instead I'm going to hide it between the two soda machines in the dark end of my basement hallway. Run the wire along the wall under my door and put black duct tape over the wire to blend it in with the black plastic strip that runs along the base of the hallway's walls. I know, this is silly, but I don't have anything better to do. Well, nothing happened. I propped open the halfway to stairwell door, steeled myself, then flung the front door wide open and ran like hell down the stairs to my room and slammed the door. I watched the webcam on my computer intently, seeing the hallway outside my door and most of the stairwell. I'm watching it right now, and I don't see anything interesting. I just wish the camera's position was different, so that I could see out the front door. Hey, someone's online. I got on an older, less functional webcam than I had in my closet to video chat with my friend online. I couldn't really explain to him why I wanted to video chat, but it felt good to see another person's face. He couldn't talk for very long, and we didn't talk about anything meaningful, but I feel much better. My strange fear has almost passed. I would feel completely better, but there was something odd about our conversation. I know that I've said that everything seemed odd, but still, he was very vague in his responses. I can't recall one specific thing he said, no particular name or place or event, but he did ask me for my email address to keep in touch. Wait, I just got an email. I am about to go out. I just got an email from Amy that asked me to meet her for dinner at the place we usually go to. I do love pizza, and I've just been eating random food from my poorly stocked fridge for days, so I can't wait. Again, I feel ridiculous about the odd couple of days I've been having. I should destroy this journal when I get back, and... oh, another email. Oh my god, I almost left the email and opened the door. I almost opened the door, but I read the email first. It was from a friend I hadn't heard from in a long time, and it was sent to a huge number of emails that must have had every person he had saved in his address list. It had no subject, and it said simply, "Seen with your own eyes, don't trust them, they." And what the hell is that supposed to mean? The words shocked me, and I keep going over and over them. Is it a desperate email sent just as something happened? The words are obviously cut out without finishing, and on any other day I would have dismissed this as spam from a computer virus or something, but the words, seen with your own eyes. I can't help but read over this journal and think back over the last few days and realize that I have not seen another person with my own eyes or talked to another person face to face. The webcam conversation with my friend, it was so strange, so vague, so eerie. And now that I think about it, was it eerie, or is it the fear clouding my memory? My mind, it toys with the progression of events I've written here, pointing out that I have not been presented with one single fact that I did not specifically give out unsuspectingly. The random wrong number that got my name, and the subsequent strange return call from Amy, the friend that asked for my email address. I messaged him first when I saw him online, and then I got my first email a few minutes after that conversation. Oh my god, the phone call with Amy. I said over the phone, I said that I was within half an hour's walk of 7th Street. They know I'm near there. What if they're trying to find me? Where is everyone else? Why haven't I seen or heard anyone else in days? No. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. I need to calm down. This madness needs to end. I don't know what to think. I ran about my apartment furiously, holding my cell phone up to every corner to see if it got a signal through the heavy walls, and finally, in the tiny bathroom near one ceiling corner, I got a single bar. Holding my phone there, I sent a text message to every number in my list. Not wanting to betray anything about my unfounded fears, I simply sent, "You seen anyone face to face lately?" At that point, I just wanted any reply back. I didn't care what the reply was, or if I embarrassed myself. I tried to call someone a few times, but I couldn't get my head up high enough, and if I brought the cell phone down even an inch, it lost signal. Then I remembered the computer and rushed over to it, instant messaging everyone online. Most were idle or away from their computer, but nobody responded. My message grew more frantic, and I started telling people where I was and to stop by in person for a host of barely passable reasons. I didn't care about anything by that point. I just needed to see another person. I also tore apart my apartment looking for something that I might have missed, some way to contact another human being without opening the door. And I know it's crazy, I know it's unfounded, but what if I need to be sure. I taped the phone to the ceiling just in case. Tuesday. The phone rang. Exhausted from last night's rampage, I must have fallen asleep. I woke up to the phone ringing and I ran to the bathroom. I stood on the toilet. I flipped open the phone taped to the ceiling. It was Amy. And I feel so much better. She was really worried about me and apparently had been trying to contact me since the last time I talked to her. She's coming over now, and yes, she knows where I am without me telling her. I feel so embarrassed. I'm definitely throwing this journal away before anyone sees it. I don't even know why I'm writing in it now. Maybe it's just because it's the only communication I've had at all since God knows when. I look like hell, too. I looked in the mirror before I came back in here. My eyes are sunken, my stubble is thicker, and I just generally look unhealthy. My apartment is trashed, but I'm not going to clean it up. I think I need someone else to see what I've been through. These past few days have not been normal. I am not one to imagine things. I know I have been the victim of extreme probability. Probably missed seeing another person a dozen times. I just happened to go out when it was late at night, or the middle of the day when everyone was gone. Everything's perfectly fine. I know this now. Plus, I found something in the closet last night that has helped me tremendously. A television. I set it up just before I wrote this, and it's on in the background. Television has always been an escape for me, and it reminds me that there's a world beyond these dingy brick walls. I'm glad Amy's the only one that responded to me after last night's frantic pestering of everyone I could contact. She's been my best friend for years. She doesn't know it, but I count the day that I met her among one of the few moments of true happiness in my life. I remember that warm summer day fondly. It seems like a different reality from this dark, rainy, lonely place. I feel like I spent days sitting in that playground, much too old to play, just talking with her and hanging around doing nothing at all. I still feel like I can go back to that moment sometimes. It reminds me that this place is not all that there is. Finally, a knock on the door. I thought it was odd that I couldn't see her through the camera I hid between the two soda machines. I figured that it was bad positioning, like when I couldn't see out the front door. I should have known. I should have known. After the knock, I yelled through the door, jokingly that I had a camera between the soda machines, because I was embarrassed myself that I had taken this paranoia so far. After I did that, I saw her image walk to the camera and look down at it. She smiled and waved. "Hey," she said to the camera brightly, giving it a wry look. It's weird, I know," I said into the mic attached to my computer. I've had a weird few days." "Must have," she replied. "Open the door, John." I hesitated. How could I be sure? "Hey, humor me for a second here," I told her through the mic. "Tell me one thing about us. Just prove to me that you're you." She gave the camera a weird look. All right," she said slowly, thinking. "We met randomly at a playground when we were both too old to be there." I sighed deeply as reality returned and fear faded. God, I've been so ridiculous. Of course it was Amy. That day wasn't anywhere in the world except in my memory. I never even mentioned it to anyone, not out of embarrassment, but out of a strange secret nostalgia and a longing for those days to return. If there was some unknown force at work trying to trick me, as I feared, there was no way they could know about that day. "All right, I'll explain everything," I told her. "Be right there." I ran to my small bathroom and fixed my hair as best I could. Looked like hell, but she would understand. Snickering at my own unbelievable behavior and the mess I'd made of the place, I walked to the door, put my hand on the doorknob, and gave the mess one last look. So ridiculous, I thought. My eyes traced over the half-eaten food lying on the ground, the overflowing trash bin, and the bed I tipped to the side looking for God knows what. I almost turned the door and opened it, but my eyes fell on one last thing. The old webcam. The one I used for that eerily vacant chat with my friend. Its silent black sphere lay haphazardly tossed to the side, its lens pointing at the table where this journal lay. And an overwhelming terror took me as I realized that if something could see through that camera, it would have seen what I just wrote about that day. I asked her for any one thing about us, and she chose the only thing in the world I thought they or it did not know. But it did. It did know. It could have been watching me the whole time. I didn't open the door. I screamed. I screamed in uncontrollable terror. I stomped on the webcam on the floor, and the door shook, and the doorknob tried to turn, but I didn't hear Amy's voice through the door. Was the basement door made to keep out drafts too thick, or was Amy not outside? What could have been trying to get in, if not her? What the hell is out there? I saw her on my computer through the camera outside. I heard her on the speakers through the camera outside. But was it real? How could I know? She's gone now. I screamed and shouted for help. I piled up everything in my apartment against the door. Friday. At least I think it's Friday. I broke everything electronic. I smashed my computer to pieces. Every single thing on there could have been accessed by network access or worse, altered. I'm a programmer. I know. Every little piece of information I gave out since this started, my name, my email, and my location, none of it came back from outside until I gave it out. I've been going over and over what I wrote. I'm I've been pacing back and forth, alternating between stark terror and overpowering disbelief. Sometimes I'm absolutely certain some phantom entity is dead set on the simple goal of getting me to go outside. But to the beginning, with the phone call from Amy, she was effectively asking me to open the door and go outside. I keep running through it in my head. One point of view says I've acted like a madman, and all of this is just extreme convergence of probability. Never going outside at the right times by pure luck, never seeing another person by pure chance, getting a random nonsense email from some computer virus at just the right time. The other point of view says that extreme convergence of probability is the reason that whatever's out there hasn't gotten me already. I keep thinking, I never opened the window on the 3rd floor. I never opened the front door. To that incredibly stupid stunt with the hidden camera, after which I ran straight to my room and slammed the door. I haven't opened my own solid door since I flung open the front door of the building. Whatever's out there, if anything's out there, never made an appearance in the building before I opened the front door. Maybe the reason it wasn't in the building already was that it was elsewhere getting everyone else, and then it waited until I betrayed my existence by trying to call Amy. A call which didn't work until it called me and asked me my name. Terror literally overwhelms me every time I try to fit the pieces of this nightmare together. That email, short cutoff. Was it from someone trying to get the word out? Some friendly voice desperately trying to warn me before it came? Seen with my own eyes. Don't trust them. Exactly what I've been so suspicious of. It could have had masterful control of all things electronic, practicing its insidious deception to trick me into coming outside. Why can't it get in? It knocked on the door. It must have some solid preference. The door, the image of those doors in the upper hallways, guardian monolith flashes back in my mind every time I trace its path of thoughts. If there is some phantom entity trying to get me to go outside, maybe it can't get through doors. I keep thinking back over all the books I've read or movies I've seen. I'm trying to generate some explanation for this. Doors have always been some intense foci of the human imagination, always seen as wards or portals of special importance, or perhaps the door is just too thick. I know that I couldn't bash through any of the doors in this building, let alone the heavy basement ones, but aside from that, the real question is, why does it even want me? If it just wanted to kill me, it could do it any number of ways, including just waiting until I starve to death. What if it doesn't want to kill me? What if it has some far more horrific fate in store for me? God, what can I do to escape this nightmare? A knock on the door. I told the people on the other side of the door I need a minute to think, and I'll come out. I'm really just writing this down so I can figure out what to do. At least this time I heard their voices. My paranoia, and yes, I recognize I'm being paranoid, has me thinking of all sorts of ways that their voices could be faked electronically. There could be nothing but speakers outside simulating human voices. Did it really take them 3 days to come talk to me? Amy is supposedly out there along with 2 policemen and a psychiatrist. Maybe it took them 3 days to think of what to say to me. The psychiatrist's claims could be pretty convincing if I decided to think this has all been a crazy misunderstanding and not some entity trying to trick me into opening the door. The psychiatrist had an older voice, authoritarian but still caring. I liked it, but I'm just desperate to see anyone with my own eyes. He said, I have something called cyber psychosis, and I'm just one of a nationwide epidemic of thousands of people having breakdowns triggered by suggestive email that got through somehow. I swear he said, got through somehow. I think he means spread throughout the country inexplicably, but I am incredibly suspicious that the entity slipped up and revealed something. He said I am part of a wave of emergent behavior, that a lot of other people are having the same problem with the same fears, even though we've never communicated. That neatly explains the strange email about eyes that I got. I didn't get the original triggering email, I got a descendant of it. My friend could have broken down too and tried to warn everyone he knew against his paranoid fears. That's how the problem spreads, the psychiatrist claims. I could have spread it too, with my texts and instant messages online to everybody I know. One of those people might be melting down right now, after being triggered by something I sent them, something that they might interpret any way that they want, something like a text saying, "Seen anyone face to face lately?" The psychiatrist told me that he didn't want to lose another one, that people like me are intelligent, and that's our downfall. We draw connections so well that we draw them even when they shouldn't be there. He said it's easy to get caught up in paranoia in our fast-paced world, a constantly changing place where more and more of our interaction is simulated. I have to give him one thing. It's a great explanation. It neatly explains everything. It perfectly explains everything, in fact. I have every reason to shake off this nightmarish fear that something or consciousness or being out there wants me to open the door so it can capture me for some horrible fate worse than death. It would be foolish, after hearing that explanation, to stay in here until I starve to death, just to spite the entity that might have gotten everyone else. It'd be foolish to think that after hearing that explanation, I might be one of the last people left alive on an empty world, hiding in my secure basement room, spiting some unthinkable, deceptive entity just by refusing to be captured. It's a perfect explanation for every single strange thing I've seen or heard. I have every reason in the world to let all of my fears go and open the door. That's exactly why I'm not going to. How can I be sure? How can I know what's real and what's deception? All of these things, with their wires and their signals that originate from some unseen origin, they're not real. I can't be sure. Signals through a camera, faked videos, deceptive phone calls, emails, even the television lying broken on the floor. How can I possibly know it's real? It's just signals. Waves. Light. The door. It's bashing on the door. It's trying to get in. What insane mechanical contrivance could it be using to simulate the sound of men attacking the heavy wood so well? At least I'll finally see with my own eyes. There's nothing left in here for it to deceive me with. I've ripped apart everything else. It can't deceive my eyes, can it? Seen with your own eyes. Don't trust them. Wait. Was the desperate message telling me to trust my eyes, or warning me about my eyes too? Oh my god, what's the difference between a camera and my eyes? They both turn light into electronic signals. They're the same. I can't be deceived. I have to be sure. I have to be sure. Date unknown. I calmly asked for paper and a pen, day in and day out, until it finally gave them to me. Not that it matters. What am I gonna do? Poke my eyes out? The bandages feel like part of me now. The pain is gone. I figure this will be one of my last chances to write legibly, as without my sight to correct mistakes, my hands will slowly forget the motions involved. This is sort of a self-indulgence, this writing. It's a relic of another time because I'm certain everyone left in the world is dead, or something far worse. I sit against the padded wall, day in and day out. The entity brings me food and water. It masks itself as a kind nurse, as an unsympathetic doctor. I think it knows that my hearing has sharpened considerably now that I live in darkness. It fakes conversations in the hallways on the off chance that I might overhear. One of the nurses talks about having a baby soon. One of the doctors lost his wife in a car accident. None of it matters. None of it is real. None of it gets to me. Not like she does. That's the worst part. The part I almost can't handle. The thing comes to me, masquerading as Amy. Its recreation is perfect. It sounds exactly like Amy, feels exactly like her. It even produces a reasonable facsimile of tears that it makes me feel on its own lifelike cheeks. When it first dragged me here, it told me all the things I wanted to hear. It told me that she loved me, that she had always loved me, that it didn't understand why I did this, that we could still have a life together if only I would stop insisting that I was being deceived. It wanted me to believe. No, it needed me to believe that she was real. I almost fell for it. I really did. I doubted myself for the longest time. In the end, though, it was all too perfect, too flawless, and too real. The false Amy used to come every day, and then every week, and finally stopped coming altogether. But I don't think the entity will give up. I think the waiting game is just another one of its gambits. I will resist for the rest of my life if I have to. I don't know what happened to the rest of the world, but I do know that this thing needs me to fall for its deceptions. If it needs that, then maybe, just maybe, I am a thorn in its agenda. Maybe Amy is still alive out there somewhere, kept alive only by my will to resist the deceiver. I hold on to that hope, rocking back and forth in my cell to pass the time. I will never give in. I will never break. I am a hero. The doctor read the paper the patient had scribbled on. It was barely readable, written in the shaky script of one who could not see. He wanted to smile at the man's steadfast resolve, a reminder of the human will to survive. But he knew that the patient was completely delusional. After all, a sane man would have fallen for the deception long ago. The doctor wanted to smile. He wanted to whisper words of encouragement to the delusional man. He wanted to scream, but the nerve filaments wrapped around his head and into his eyes made him do otherwise. His body walked into the cell like a puppet and told the patient once more that he was wrong and that there was nobody trying to deceive him. Ghost stories? Nah, we don't have anything like that around here. But we do have the story of Jacob. That's about as close as you'll get. You really want to know? Well, I'm not supposed to tell you, but alright, just no interrupting. I don't have the patience for it. Let's see, how to describe Jacob Emory. Well, I guess you could say he was the kind of guy you could never take notice of. This isn't to say he was a bad kid in any sense. Many people in this town thought he was the most reliable person for an odd job in the state, but he never really excelled in anything. He was the living proof behind the statement, Jack of all trades, ace of none. Most of this was due to his own lack of will. He dabbled in damn near everything this town could offer him. Automobiles, radio operations, store management, what have you, but he never stuck with anything. His friends and workers went after him about it a number of times, but everybody got the same unsatisfying response. Just wasn't enough. Needless to say, any friends he kept were either very patient or never spoke to the matter altogether. It was probably inevitable then that Jacob would leave to go abroad. I don't remember where he went, but I think Gertrude down the street knew before she passed on. You have to scout someone else if you ever get curious. In any case, no one ever tried to stop him. Everybody thought a little travel would stamp the ambition out of him, or at least feed it until it was no longer an issue. Hell, we even gave him a sending-off party, which I thought was pretty nice of everybody. So anyway, he was gone for 6, 7 years. Can't remember. You have to check with someone else about that too. Anyways, he came back eventually. And he had changed, obviously enough. He was amiable, energetic, all smiles, all the time, and we all quickly learned why. He showed us a souvenir he'd brought back, a solid black stick. the length of a pencil but the texture of chalk. We all wondered why on earth such a simple thing would have prompted such a spring in his step, until he gave his demonstration. He took a piece of paper, and with this stick, God, there's got to be a better word for it. Well, with this stick, he drew a crude circle. It dropped and rested on the border of the paper like a stone. It didn't leave the paper, but it acted out on it, sort of like an old movie projector on a screen. Son, I know how crazy that sounds, and if you feel like playing skeptic, then you can leave an old man to his craziness. But I know what I saw. Even if everyone's been hushing it up, that stone he drew dropped. Jake even passed around the paper, and as it was being passed, it rolled around as the paper got tilted. None of us had any words for it. Hell, what was there to say? But he continued drawing demonstration after demonstration for us. Stick figures in various pageants and plays, doing everything from fighting each other to making perfect human pyramids. We all thought it was incredible. That was all the go-ahead he needed. He announced that he planned to put on shows to pay for rent and food, where he would draw anything that the crowd members wanted. That we talked to some length about, and he eventually convinced us that it would be safe, his drawings ethical, the practice lucrative and unique, and the attention would not go anywhere outside the town's borders. Poor Jacob. If I'd not been so swept up in the moment, I would have read the signs right then and there and saved the sorry son of a gun by snapping the terrible thing in half. But I was younger. We all were. And we saw no problem with encouraging him with what we saw as an incredible experience to be shared with everyone else. Now, he didn't have any big radio or television connections, mind you, and the internet wouldn't come around for another decade. So he did what all people on a shoestring budget do. He advertised his show with flyers. Flyers might not mean anything to you city folk, but in a small town, they gave a fair glance over from time to time. And what's more, Jacobs managed to stick out by having little fingers jump up and down and whatnot to get people's attention. His first show must have gotten nearly 60 or so people, probably a lot more than that, and his shows were fantastic. Someone would shout out a scene from a play or a comedy sketch, and Jake's hand would fly over a white wall like a bird. He'd been holding back when he made that stone, that's for damn sure. His illustrations were all spot on, and he could make an incredible human figure in minutes. Now to think of it, I don't remember any of his scenes lasting more than 10 minutes to make. They were all really well done scenes, too. Not only could you see a knight charge a castle, Jake would draw the castle's interior as well, like a wedding cake split down the middle. So you could see the knight scale the walls, fight his way through the levels of the dungeon, fight back out with the princess, and make him leap and jump off castle parapets onto his getaway horse, all in complete silence. Not realistic, no, but that was part of the appeal. None of us went in there expecting something real. When a scene or sketch was finished, either the characters would leave off the wall or he'd cover the wall with white paint. This was good in a way, gave these shows a time limit so that when he'd finish with all 4 walls in the room, everyone knew the show was over. So the paint dried. Jake, meanwhile, was changing in a bad way. I mentioned that upon his return, he'd been extremely energetic, but that energy, that vitality or fervor, or whatever you want to call it, never left him. Not for an instant. Far from it, it seemed to grow in him, actually, and he enjoyed it all too much. His eyes grew wider, he slept gradually less over time, his statements and opinions more radical and frenzied, and though he never was a pushover, he was starting to make people nervous in his company. A month or 2 passed, and Jake's audience grew like a wildfire. Nearly everyone in town paid to see Jake's art in action, and he had rent out larger and larger places for them to sit. He now didn't stop after one scene was done. He moved directly on to the next, put on the next blank space on the wall, sometimes to the intriguing effect of causing scenes to mingle, which the crowd loved. The subject matter got more wild and immoral. The monsters got more bizarre and creative, the fighters using more impossible weaponry, all for the sake of the crowd's interests. Jake got suddenly more indulgent, which we figured was from the money, and he became a drinker and a womanizer. Neither of which got rid of that vitality, by the way. Some of these women claimed that they'd woken up in the middle of the night to see him scribbling with that stick on a drawing pad, a gigantic grin on his face, while most of them said they'd assume he was drawing them in the nude. There's rumors that one or two of them got glances at that notepad. Those anonymous few supposedly said that those drawings absolutely weren't nude pictures, but neither of them, whoever they are, will say what he was drawing. Don't bother looking for the notepads or flyers. They're all gone now. I'm getting off track. Point is, he was hitting the bottle, and that's important, because it was that drinking that would eventually ruin everything. On the night of one of his performances, as he walked in front of his cheering crowd, it was immediately apparent to everybody that he was completely drunk. I was in the front row, and I could smell the bourbon on him from 10 feet away. The show started, and he went through a bunch of sketches and scenarios the crowd recommended, when at the end, somebody asked that he draw himself. Everyone cheered the idea. I guess they'd been wondering what his creations thought of him, and he eventually obliged. No sooner had Jake finished connecting the final 2 lines on his coat than every single character across the vast, expansive wall all stopped and looked directly at that illustration. Lovers stopped kissing, clowns stopped laughing, robots stopped fighting pirates. Everything stopped and looked at the Jacob illustration. The crowd died almost instantly, and I remembered Jake's face at that moment. Pale white, full of terrible comprehension at his mistake, and looking desperately for the cans of white paint he'd forgotten to put out before the show. Everyone else, they were looking at the fake Jacob. That Jacob reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a black stick of his own, and as we all watched, drew a door. He pushed on his side and the door swung open, allowing him to walk through onto the floor of the auditorium. The rest was pandemonium. People screamed and ran for the exits as Jacob's characters, both those currently on the wall and which had previously been left covered up, ran out of their own exit, throwing pies, shooting lasers, blowing fire, poison, and the impossible. I was near enough the exit to escape and gave only one backwards glance, and the scene will haunt me forever. Jacob Emory was being dragged by his creations, kicking and screaming through the door his copy had made. The auditorium burned down, obviously enough, but I had no idea how many characters escaped, what happened to the fake Emory, or how many people died. The fire brought the fire department from the nearest cities up to over 100 miles away. They in turn brought the police force, which brought the government, and hushed up everything. They took the flyers and any art Jake had made and swore everyone to secrecy or else life detainment. The fire was blamed on a cigarette in the garbage during a basketball game, and we all eventually went on with our lives. Jacob was made to never have existed. And in retrospect, I realized everything. Jacob had been creating illustrations. Illustrations don't move, much less act or attack. They're just images people see. Shadows made to look like real things. Jacob had been making life. Actual thinking things in some alternate dimension, using a power that was never meant to fall to mortal hands. He got drunk on his power, and his punishment was probably well deserved. Incidentally, the government screwed up on 2 different accounts. He did a damn good job silencing everyone, but proof remains. The ruins are still there, you know. The auditorium's ruins. I hear they're going to start reconstruction soon, which will wipe out any remaining evidence someone can definitely see, but I went back there once, several years after the fire, just once. And amidst the rubble covered in ash, I saw something squirming. I looked closer. It was Jacob Emory's hand on the wall. Exactly like I had been 3 years ago. Sweaty, calloused, but I remember. It was constantly flailing, as if the body it was supposed to be attached to was still writhing in flames. That was mistake number 1. Number 2 were those creations. Like I said, I don't know how many escaped, nor how many the government agents found and caught, but I will say only this. Those tall grass meadows on the outskirts of town, don't go into them. Ever. You were asking about those white figures you've seen at night, right? Well, I told you. This town doesn't have any ghost stories. Me and 3 friends that came home for the weekend, they're all in college, and usually we'd get together at least once a year, all friends from high school. For the camping trip, we planned to go backpacking deep in the forest, live off of fish that we catch and animals that we could trap. We've been doing this for a while in Texas and in numerous places, Arizona, Colorado, if anyone's familiar with the Spanish Peaks there, and New Mexico, so we're pretty much used to anything you'd encounter out there. It was my turn to pick where we went camping, so I chose Huntsville. More accurately, it was Huntsville, New Waverly. So we drove up there, park our car at the camping park spot, start walking off to the forest. We had some laughs along the way, everyone catching up with each other's lives. We walked until it started to get dark and set up camp where we stopped. Everyone gathered wood to make a fire, and we set our own tent up. And we do what we always do, try to scare each other with weird stories. Around this time, we started to smell something very faint. It was noticeable, but not overbearing. They couldn't put our finger on what it was, so we just carried on. Mike had to go pee, and he went off to the forest. A second later, he came running back, pee all down his jeans like he missed really bad. Immediately, we all crack up and throw some jokes at him, but we noticed he was white as snow and trying to catch his breath. He starts screaming for us to follow him and runs off. We all get serious and go follow him, not knowing what the problem was. We start to hear a faint scream and crying in the distance in the direction we were running. It was pitch black away from the camp, and Mike had the only flashlight. We left ours at the camp. He had his from his trip taking a pee. So at this stage, we didn't have much choice but to follow the light, which was frantically pointing here and there in front of him. The scream gets closer, and Mike starts to slow down. We then notice a ratty old cabin that looked like it was abandoned, except for a faint light that we could see from one of the old mildew-covered windows. The crying was intense. Whoever it was couldn't breathe enough to let out a full yell. We all followed Micah to the front door, and we could all hear the crying from inside. As soon as he knocked on the door, it stopped. We all waited and heard really heavy footsteps walking fast to the door. It was a giant slam against the door and the sound of a bolt unlocking, then nothing. We waited for a bit, knocked a few more times, but still nothing happened. We walked around the house. There was no way any of us were leaving each other's side, and noticed a window, which was a good ways up. Alex took a deep breath and asked us to give him a boost so he can see inside. Me and Mike lifted him up to the window, watched him brush away dirt and webs from the window, and place his face close to the window to try and see something. There was a quick beat, and then suddenly, he breathed in fast and let out a loud scream. Then he fell back from the window, screaming bloody murder the whole way. We all tried to calm him down, but he was hysterical. We went to him, but he started to shake, punch, kick, cuss, you name it, and then took off towards the camp. None of us wanted to be separated, so we all ran close behind him. We caught up to him and grabbed him and set him down. The fire was dying, so I grabbed some nearby wood that we collected and added it to the fire. My hands were shaking. I had to do something. I went back to Alex and we tried to calm him down. He wouldn't. He kept screaming and was breathing so hard that he eventually fainted. All of us are terrified now, and we all kept the fire high until sunrise. Periodically, Alex kept waking up, screaming just like before. By sunrise, he was up and looked catatonic, just mumbling to himself and whimpering. Me and Mike decided to go look at the camera now it was daylight. We searched where we thought it was, except there was nothing there. Nothing at all. The indistinct smell from last night had now grown into a very strong odor of something dead. something stale. We headed back to the camping site, and when we got there, we found Alex had chewed into the sides of his face and swallowed so much blood that he was throwing up. John was at his back, and he looked like he was about to die from exhaustion. I guess we all looked that way. I just didn't notice until I saw his face. Alex said quietly that we need to leave. Now. We all started to pack up the tent. It started to rain really heavily. It was about noon, and the sky started to grow really dark. Alex started to go into a panic. He went and grabbed a large stick and yelled at us to leave it and leave now, or he'd knock us out and drag us out of there himself. Mike started to yell at him, and they started to fight. We broke it up and finished packing, and started to make our way back. After a little while, we arrived at the creek we had crossed the previous day, only it was flooded over. The water was moving too fast for us to cross it. Alex started to scream again, yelling at Mike for taking his time packing out of the tent when we could have gotten out of here. This went on for a while until we finally convinced Alex to calm down and tell us what happened. He said as soon as he put his face to the glass, a face on the other side did the same thing. It started to smile really big. It had dark eyes and a dark mouth which was much bigger than Alex's, and as the smile got as large as it could, a giant shadow behind it swung something down and sliced its face off. The face was stuck to the window, and he said it started to laugh quietly as it slid down. Mike, still aggravated, and though he wouldn't admit it, beginning to get freaked out, started to argue with him again. We eventually started to follow the creek for a way to cross. We then started to see toys floating in the creek. Really old toys, old Barbie dolls and baby dolls, and this wasn't like any old trash floating in the creek, though. This was a lot of Barbies, a lot of baby dolls. One washed towards the side and Mike picked it up. It had some kind of voice chip that was dying and started to say some gurgling words that we couldn't understand, followed by its sad excuse for laughter. Then it just sounded like it was whispering. We thought the batteries must be dead, so Mike threw it down into a bush. We kept going, and the sun was starting to set. Alex was freaking out more now and was whimpering and breathing heavily. We all started to see shadows move behind trees, something we all called BS on until we all were seeing it. It was barely light out, and we stop as we see the cabin right in front of us. None of us knows what to think. Mike says, "This is bullcrap, I'm going in there." Alex tries to stop him. We all do. All of us just wanted to go home, but Mike tells us all to screw off. Do our own thing. He doesn't care anymore. That this is all bull. We start to hear hundreds of the same sort of baby dolls before, laughing, whispering, and trying to sing. We start to move forward past the cabin, all of us, and kept pushing forward. But we smelled something dead in the air, something stale, the same something as before. We started to hear something crying and something screaming. We kept on going. We eventually crossed the creek and left the woods. We got back to our vehicle and got in. It's pitch black, but we drive. We're about to get on the 45 to Houston, but the road is under construction and can't be accessed. It points to a detour. As we head towards the detour, it seems to be a small, bumpy road going into the woods. We then see a young girl come up to us. She looks like she was in trouble, young and pretty. She approaches the passenger side door. She looks like she's really drugged up or beaten up. Alex doesn't roll down the window, nor does he open the door. She reaches for the handle, and he immediately locks it. She puts her face to the window and starts to smile real big, and we floor it. Alex starts to cry and scream, and we are all breathing heavily. We finally cut on a street that takes us to the 45, and we take it the whole way. When we get back to my apartment, everyone doesn't know what to say, and we all break apart, go our separate ways. Mike messages me later saying he's going to go back. I try to convince him not to, and all he does is say it was our own minds that were screwing with us. I think he just wants to prove to himself he wasn't scared. I can smell that stench everywhere now. I don't go out anymore. I just stay in, don't answer the door. Last week, everyone I met was acting really strange. People that I knew for a long time and total strangers. My own dad. When I went to his place to eat supper with him, he just watched me strangely. When I was sitting down, he didn't say a word the whole time. I kept asking him what's wrong, but he just slowly shook his head. When I was leaving to go home, I turned to wave. He had black eyes and an open mouth like he was in pain. When I started to walk back, he shut the door and bolted it. I stayed there knocking and knocking, but nothing. I called him. His phone was disconnected. I even called the police. Halfway through the questions they were asking me, the connection started to fade into static. I could hear a faint mumbling, singing, and laughing. Mike has completely vanished. There's not even a record of him being alive. When I called Alex's house, they talk to me like I'm some salesman. They say they don't know any Alex and to please stop calling. The person who tells me that is Alex's mother. I can't get a hold of John. Someone knocked on my door, and when I went to look, I saw a face completely covering the peephole, and a giant smile started to form. I called the cops again, and instead of it turning into static, they got real strange. Sir, are you affected by any drugs at the moment? No. Are you coming home anytime soon? Excuse me? Come home. And the phone call ended. My mail slot swings every now and then. Someone is sliding pieces of baby dolls through it. I try to call people now, and all I can hear is static and bad baby doll noises and this crying, screaming. My TV is busted, but when I go to pee, I can hear it on. I might be going insane. Whoever lives above me started to scream in pain and crying deeply recently. I hear giant footsteps from their apartment. I hear bangs and something falling to the ground from the neighbors to the right of my apartment. I hear what sounds like a baby that never gets tended to. It sounds like a baby doll whose batteries are dying. My phone has been ringing now, and it's Alex telling me things in a language that I've never heard before, nor could I even managed to repeat. I kept getting emails of pictures of black and small colorations. Now I can't even access my email. Someone knocks on the door and they slam against it. I hear the bolts unlocking one by one. I run to make sure I lock them all back. And then I sit down. And I begin to cry. Greetings. I guess I should say up front that I'm new here, so be patient with me, as I do not know all the rules or etiquette or whatnot. A friend of mine linked me to this board after I told him the story and showed him the materials I'm about to share with you. He thinks some of you will appreciate it, but to be honest, from where I'm sitting, this type seems more like a haven for idiots than a serious paranormal image board. Whatever. I'm motivated to share this stuff and need to do so anonymously, for reasons which will become clear. Technically, I'm breaking the law, but if I understand how this place works, this thread will disappear in a day or so anyway. Here's the deal. I'm a production editor at a small independent publisher in the US. I won't say which or where, so don't ask, as I'd like to keep my job. The pay isn't that great, but it's an easy gig. And I like the people I work with. A lot of what we publish are what you'd call coffee table books, the kind people flip through when they're bored, but almost nobody ever reads cover to cover. Bland, pictorial histories of certain cities or states that sell well in regional gift shops, the occasional book of maps, or a biography. A few museums outsource their gallery catalogs to us, that kind of thing. The work is boring, but it's steady, and we get enough jobs, and our books make enough money to stay afloat. Which is a lot more than most small presses can say these days. Because we've been around for a while, our name is somewhat known to history buffs and people who think they're an expert on such and such town in nowhere, Idaho, or some esoteric topic no one really cares about. We get a lot of unsolicited manuscripts from people that really shouldn't be writing books, and unsolicited CDs full of photographs from people that should not be taking pictures. Because we're small and don't have a separate acquisitions editor position, the job of going through this slush pile gets passed around the office. Very rarely somebody will find something worth pursuing and pitch it to the rest of us, but our senior editor and publisher gets the final say. For the last 9 months, I've been working more or less non-stop on a book that everybody at the office was pretty excited about. Our copy editor found it during his turn with the pile. An old guy, I won't name, had contracted us out of the blue and offered us the chance to publish his rare, archival photo collection, provided we treat the subject matter with the respect and seriousness he felt it deserved. To use his term in what was going to be the book's title, the photos were all anomalies. That is to say, they depicted something out of the ordinary or otherwise inexplainable, something that usually had an equally interesting story to go along with it. Most of them were from the first half of the 20th century. Like I said, it's not the kind of thing we normally publish, but the few samples the guy sent in with his pitch letter were pretty compelling, and once we had seen the rest of them, heard a few of the stories, and realized that none of these pictures were widely known, we knew we had something that would get people's attention. The format was going to be simple and classy, with a lot of white space and breathing room. Each photo would appear as a high-quality print on the right-hand page, followed by a blank left-hand page, and then a couple paragraphs to caption each photo on the following right-hand page. From the very beginning, the guy was a nightmare to work with, and the job took forever because he refused to send in more than one document at a time. He would send me certified mail, I would get it, scan it, and mail it back certified, and only then would he send the next one. He seemed to think he had an extremely valuable collection and was highly paranoid about losing it, so he only risked one item at a time. In the end, we spent so much money on mailing costs that it would have been cheaper to fly me to where the old guy lived with a scanner and a laptop. We were maybe a third of the way through the production process when this guy pulled the rug from under us. Somebody had offered him a large sum of money for the photos, way more than we were offering for the book rights, on the condition that our book get canned and the photos stayed out of the public eye. We demanded he come in for a face-to-face and tried to reason with him, and caught her to his pride and desire for scholarly acclaim, and for a few days it seemed like it had worked. But when he got back home, he flip-flopped again and started cursing out me and my senior editor on the phone, demanding we shelve the book. He hired a lawyer who came up with some BS to void his contract, and then he threatened us with a lawsuit that would bankrupt us if we went ahead with the project and lost. To add insult to injury, the law firm sent this annoying little IT guy to our office to make sure the materials were wiped from our computers, because the vast majority of it existed on my machine, and I had spent literally months of my life on the project. I felt, and still feel, violated and bitter about the whole thing. Somebody should benefit from all that work, hence my reasons for coming here. Unfortunately, I don't have the high-resolution scans I made of the photos, but I did keep working drafts of the original captions and 14 media-res placeholder thumbnails that Quark created as I was laying out the original version of the book. Don't ask me why we're still using Quark. It's what we know and we paid for a long time ago. I'm not supposed to, but I occasionally take home the working Quark files to tweak on my home machine. The full file with the full-res images embedded gets way too large and unwieldy to bring home with me most of the time. I'm just experimenting with fonts and layout options anyway, so I don't embed the files until the end. Anyway, once all this went down, I discovered that I had a working file on my home machine of what we had done so far. So I printed the PDF and then stripped the text and images from that PDF file. You folks would be the beneficiaries of that. Just to be clear, I don't claim anything with regards to the veracity or provenance of these photos. I'm not here to convince you they're real. I'm just putting them out there because I think they deserve to be seen, and not hidden in some rich prick's private collection. Photo number 1, the Collinwood Fire. This is the last known photo taken inside the Lakeview School in Collinwood, Ohio, before it was consumed by fire on March 4th, 1908, killing 172 students, 2 teachers, and 1 rescuer. The fire started when a ceiling joist ignited from a nearby steam pipe. Flames blocked escape routes, leading to a panic and stampede that trapped a large number of victims in a stairwell, where they were cooked alive. Additionally, casualties were incurred when burning students jumped from second and third story windows. Everyone in this photo perished, except for Mr. Olson, seated at the far right in the back row. The spectral artifacts in this photo remained unexplained. Photo number 2, Charlie Noonan's last interview. Charlie Noonan was an amateur folklorist who traveled throughout the South and Southwest United States during the early years of the 20th century, collecting tall tales and stories of the supernatural. According to his wife Ellie, Charlie was told a story one day by an Oklahoma farmer about a strange woman who lived alone on an isolated property in the Panhandle. The farmer claimed the woman was not a woman at all, but something else. Something that hid its true nature behind a headscarf and was never seen without a large dog by its side. Noonan was apparently intrigued enough to try searching for the woman during one of his research road trips. He was never seen again. Ellie Noonan was later contracted by a Tulsa pawnbroker who remembered reading about her husband's disappearance in the papers, and after finding his name engraved on a camera sold to him by an antiquarian, the pawnbroker returned the camera, and Mrs. Noonan had the film inside developed in the hopes of finding a clue as to his whereabouts. This was the only photo on the roll. Unfortunately, neither the location of the property nor the name of the farmer who told him the story was recorded in Noonan's notes. Photo 3. The Death of John Ulsted. This prothically torn photograph depicts a regimental color guard of the Union Army, 1 month before they marched into battle at Antietam, September 1862. The gentleman on the far right, named John Ulsted, had the right side of his face and right arm blown off by cannon fire at the start of those hostilities. It is unknown exactly when the damage to the photo occurred. Photo 4. The Axeman of New Orleans. Edouard Martel was an unsuccessful French photographer and inventor who traveled throughout the U.S. during the first 2 decades of the 20th century, trying to drum up interest in investors for a device that added timer and automatic exposure features to Kodak's popular line of folding brownie cameras. During his travels, he took thousands of automated photos to test and refine his invention. Often, he would wake up early, set up a hidden camera in an inconspicuous spot on the streets of whatever city he had happened to be in, and then walked to a nearby cafe or bar so that he could capture candid scenes of daily life to remember his travels by. The best of these photos were selected for Martel's one and only gallery show in Paris 1924. Unfortunately, Martel died penniless and unknown in 1955, and it was left to his daughter Jean to sort through the boxes and boxes of photos he left behind to see what should be kept and what could be discarded. During this process, she came across this photo, taken in New Orleans on the morning of October 28, 1919, a few hours before Martel boarded a steamer ship and returned to France. It turns out that Martel hated motion blurs in his photographies because he thought they would reflect badly on the speed and accuracy of his lens mechanism. This prejudice made him cast aside and overlook what was probably the most important photo he ever took. What makes this photo so special? The night before it was taken, the notorious and still unidentified serial killer, known only as the Axeman of New Orleans, had committed his last murder, hacking Mike Pepitone to death in his bedroom and then fleeing the scene, just as Pepitone's wife was discovering the body. Could this be him returning to his residence? It's impossible to say, but if it is, the image appears to belie the legend based on the shaky testimony of Pauline and Mary Bruno and prevailing prejudice of the time that only a black man was capable of such savagery. Photo number 5. The Grand Caverns Cryptids. This photo was taken in 1895 by an amateur spelunker and photographer named Oren Jeffries while exploring an unmapped section of Grand Caverns in southwestern Virginia. At the time it was taken, Jeffries was conducting photographic experiments using super long exposures to see if anything, at all, could be captured in the total absence of light, otherwise known as cave darkness. He would situate himself on level ground, extinguish his lantern, and then open the lens to his homemade box camera for as long as he could stand the darkness. During one of these experiments, he heard something approach from the deeper recesses of the cave. Frightened, Jeffries abandoned his experiment and set off one of the blitz-light flashes he used for taking traditional photos underground. According to the report he later gave to a local newspaper, Jeffries saw 3 humanoid creatures staring at him from the shadows and took off running in the other direction, not stopping until he was topside. Several days later, he returned with 3 other men to retrieve his box camera. This is the only image that was recorded on the film inside. Photo 6. The Harlow Twins. 1938, Evergreen Park, Illinois, outside of Chicago. Billy and Stevie Harlow were riding in the front seat with their mother Tammy when their Ford sedan collided head-on with a Chrysler. During the collision, the car spun in such a way as to impact 2 additional vehicles. Tammy Harlow survived, but the boys were ejected through the windshield and killed instantly. A crime scene photographer from the local paper took this shot as a crew of volunteers worked frantically to free John Downing, the driver of the Chrysler. It appears that little Billy and Stevie stuck around to watch. Photo 7. The Sorensens Tragedy. The Sorensens were a Danish family who immigrated to the United States sometime between 1905 and 1906. They arrived with their eldest child, Anders, seen on the donkey, and settled on a farmstead in Missouri. 3 more children, Simone, Fricke, and Mathilde, centered right and on the wagon respectively, soon followed. This photo, taken in 1916, captures all 4 of the children a few weeks before the tragedy. The 3 eldest kids were apparently playing fort in the hay barn and must have fallen asleep. Their father, Nicholas, drove a wooden hay sweeper to the pile and dismembered all 3, in locations accurately suggested by the flaw in the photo. Mathilde, the youngest, was inside the house with her mother at the time and not hurt. According to the son of a neighbor later interviewed by the author, the donkey later died in an equally hideous fashion by getting its head caught in a barbed wire fence and nearly decapitating itself in a frenzy to get free. This final detail could not be corroborated. Photo number 8. The Spectre of Viola Peters. Viola Peters was a well-born spinster who lived alone in a small rural town of McKaysville, Georgia. She was much loved in her community for her charitable contributions to the Baptist church, the soup kitchen, and the local orphanage, especially during the Depression, when those institutions subsisted almost entirely on her largesse. In July 1935, Viola was brutally assaulted and murdered by a drifter named Tom Cullen, who had worked briefly at the nearby copper refinery. Cullen proceeded to stay in Viola's house and savage her corpse for an additional 17 days before he was caught and captured. A posse of enraged locals stormed the country jail, took Cullen, and lynched him from the old bridge over the Toka River. This photo was taken by Garrett Killian, a witness to the lynching, and caused quite a stir when it was published a few days later in the Atlanta Constitution. To most, it suggested that Viola's spirit achieved some measure of peace by attending her killer's execution. But some twisted minds saw in her forlorn countenance a longing to get one last look at her one and only lover. Photo number 9. The Ghost of Sarah Eustace. Danvers State Hospital, formerly Danvers State Lunatic Asylum, was a Kirkbride-style psychiatric hospital built in 1874 on what was then an isolated site in rural Massachusetts. Like all Kirkbride asylums, it was famous for its Gothic architecture and its use of now outdated medical techniques to treat insanity. Danvers is often cited as the birthplace of the prefrontal lobotomy. Danvers has several other claims to fame. It was the inspiration for the fictional Arkham Sanatorium that appeared in several stories by H.P. Lovecraft, which in turn inspired the Arkham Asylum in the fictional Batman universe. It was also where the cult horror film Session 9 was filmed. That film put the vast network of tunnels beneath Danvers to good cinematic effect. It's no accident that the filmmakers chose to use the tunnels, as rumors of their haunting had dogged Danvers for over 100 years. The most famous story concerns Sarah Eustace, a patient who escaped her ward in 1955 and snuck into the tunnel system. Despite multiple searches and a week-long lockdown of the asylum, Sarah was never seen again. It was assumed she died down there, lost, thirsty, and alone. A nurse at Danvers named Gail Malloy became obsessed with Sarah's story and spent many of her off hours searching the tunnels for her remains. Though she never found the body, she did snap this photo in late 1966, which suggests that Sarah Eustace walks the Danvers tunnels to this very day. Photo number 10, the Stevensons family portrait. Who says ghosts don't have a sense of humor? The Stevensons were a wealthy Boston family, proud of the industry and longevity with which most of the clan was blessed. This portrait, taken in 1945, was an effort to gather the oldest Stevensons together with one of the youngest. Amelia, at the center, age 102, was granted the honor of matriarch, while little Ophelia was the token child at 18 months. What the Stevensons did not realize until this photo was developed was that they had been joined that day by one of their deceased. James Pullman Stevenson, born 1835 and died 1932, seated on the left between his niece Ginny and his cousin Alfred, was easily identified by several of those present, and remembered fondly as a rascally uncle, known for pranks and dirty jokes. Photo number 11, the disappearance of Mrs. Yurno. During her later years, Josephine Yurno would take a walk every evening at dusk around her beloved neighborhood in Norwich, Connecticut. On November 12, 1935, she set out as usual and never returned. Extensive searches were conducted by a large team of volunteers in the Norwich police force, but no sign of her was ever found. 3 years later, Mrs. Yurno was found squatting in front of a neighbor's house without a mark on her body and in perfect health. When asked where she had been, Mrs. Yurno wasn't able to understand the question. From her point of view, no time had passed at all. Against the advice of her neighbors and her doctor, she refused all medical treatment and resumed her life as if nothing had ever happened, including her nightly strolls. Another neighbor snapped the shot of her in the fall of 1938. Clouds of smoke from piles of burning leaves give it an appropriately eerie feel. On the same date in November 1940, 5 years after her initial disappearance, Mrs. Yurno vanished again, and this time she was never seen again. Photo 12, the fate of Sally York. The 1912 threshing of little Sally York, aged 9, in the cotton loom of the North Fork Textile Mill was one of a handful of such accidents that helped legislators push through the Keating-Owning Act of 1916, the first child labor law in American history. From the time of the accident until the mill's closing 4 decades later, workers consistently complained of cold spots, strange noises, and sudden taps on the shoulder when nobody was near. The mill's foreman never paid these complaints any mind until this photograph surfaced in 1932. It was taken by a traveling photographer named Benny Johnson, who promptly sold it to the Norfolk Gazette for an unprecedented $10. The mill had shut down for the Christmas holidays and was empty at the time. The photo was later blamed for the closing of the mill, though the Great Depression was the more likely cause of that. Photo 13. Lily Palmer's Eyes. Lily Palmer was not quite 4 when she experienced what her doctors would later call an acute onset of sensory hallucinations. This photo, taken by Lily's mother Annette on Halloween night 1952, purportedly captures the arrival of her disorder. Lily and her Filipino nanny were setting out for a round of trick-or-treating when the child suddenly screamed and began to claw at her eyes. It was some time before she was calm enough to speak, but when asked what she saw, Lily repeatedly spoke about things crawling in her eyes. Several days later, while unsupervised in her bedroom, Lily punctured both of her eyes with one of her mother's knitting needles. After receiving medical treatment, she was evaluated and committed. She remained institutionalized for the rest of her life, first at Bellevue at the east side of Manhattan, and later at the Rockland Psychiatric Center in Orangeburg, where she remained until she died of a heart attack in March 2001. A call to one of her former caregivers at Rockland confirmed that Lily's episodes were most traumatic on and around Halloween night. But for the majority of her life, she could be heard begging and pleading with the staff to help her get these things out of her eyes. The final photo, 14. The Trinity Deception. This is one of the several famous photographs taken of the first ever nuclear detonation, conducted by the U.S. Army on July 16, 1945, in the White Sands Proving Ground, located in the Jornada del Muerto Desert, about 35 miles southeast of Socorro, New Mexico. The setting off of this implosion-designed plutonium device, the same method used in the Fat Man device dropped on Nagasaki, ushered in the atomic age and the eventual arms race between the United States and Russia. Only a handful of people were aware that this photo was cropped before it was ever released to the public, and they are all now dead. One of them was the original photographer, who gave the author a copy of the original on the condition that it be kept out of the public eye until such a time that the citizens of the world could handle the ramifications of what it depicts. The author remains uncertain whether this criteria has been met, but given that he likely owns the last exact copy, he has decided his responsibility rests with the truth. Frank, Thomas, and Kirby enter the office break room at approximately 12:25 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. Each man holds various containers designed for holding food and drink, and as they lazily slump into their fiberglass chairs that were haphazardly pushed under the table after their previous uses, the room echoes of violent thwomp pops and elongated scraw jips as Tupperware lids fly open and Velcro bags release their treasures. God! Ugh. Thomas rolls his eyes. Frank, with a mouthful of cold pizza, mumbles in empathy. Wife packed her to the shower again, huh? Thomas tosses the soggy sandwich down onto the table with a resounding glop. She knows I hate this stuff. I swear I've almost reached my breaking point with this. Why don't you just pack your own lunch? Kirby attempts to speak, through teeth caked with salad. A drip of ranch dressing falls from Kirby's lips and collides with the table. Thomas just glares at Kirby in disdain. You don't get it, man. I've told her 50 times I don't like tuna salad. But does she listen? No. Thomas raises his right hand to his forehead. I swear I am up to here with this. Well, at least we're not like that one guy. Frank wipes his mouth at the residual pepperoni grease with a cheap paper napkin. What one guy? Thomas looks at Frank in slight confusion. You, talking about that guy from CompuTools? I heard about it on the news last week. Kirby chimes in. He's already begun digging into his pudding cup. Thomas spins around to Kirby. What are you two talking about? Frank wipes his hands with another napkin, folds his hands in front of him, and leans in quietly. Thomas and Kirby follow suit. You see, there was this guy over at CompuTools. Nice guy here. What was his name? Frank concentrates on the ceiling, search for a name. Suddenly, Frank snaps his fingers. Phil Curbson. Anyway, he was one of those diligent workers, never complained, always got his work done before deadline. Heck, he'd even stay late to make sure that his perfect record was never tarnished. Thomas chimed in. I hate those guys. Well, supposedly, CompuTools hired this new hotshot manager, basic ROTC'd up from corporate, never lifted a finger in his life and got to skip right to the front. Thomas shook his head. Exactly. So this guy was brought in to, Frank raised his finger quotations, help. And since this douche didn't really know anything about CompuTools products, he would just bark orders and micromanage everyone. Everyone in the office was buzzing. We're gonna quit. Let's get HR involved. This guy is completely heartless. The usual empty water cooler promises. Everyone was in a tiff, except for Phil. Phil would mind his own business and do his work with a silent smile. He would even go so far as to asking his new manager, anything else I could do to help? Well, I don't know if that manager deliberately planned to be this malicious, or if it's just common nature for him, but he got this notion in his head to see how far he could bend Phil until he broke. Starting the very next day, the manager threw the biggest workflow onto Phil's desk and barked out, I need this done by 5 o'clock today, or you can just pack your stuff up now. Something to that effect. Phil quietly turned to face the manager, smiled his calm, innocent smile, and said, Sure thing, boss. 5 o'clock rolls around, Phil walks into the manager's office and proudly places the completed report onto the man's desk. Here you go, boss. The manager looked up from polishing and buffing his prized 600-pound marble desk to the completed papers, and with a look of complete shock. How could one man complete that report in only 7.5 hours? His eyes then shifted from the report to glare viciously to look upon Phil's calm, lucid face. Anything else I can do to help? Smiled Phil. The manager simply shook his head in disbelief. Okay, well, I'm gonna head out for the day, sir. You have yourself a great evening. The manager was flabbergasted. He steeled his motives and vowed that he would try harder to break this man's spirit by the end of the week. Well, the end of the week came and went, and still Phil was as cheerful as ever, always responding to every outrageous task with a happy, sure thing, and then turning in the completed work to the manager at the end of the day with a pleasant, anything else I could do to help? Well, this went on for a few weeks, and the manager, now seeing that current efforts were fruitless, now decided that maybe he needed to up the ante. The manager would now bombard Phil with major accounts and lengthy business trips and tedious conferences, all to quell his passion that Phil must be broken. But with every new and more difficult task, Phil would embrace it with a sure thing, boss, and come back for more with a sunny, anything else I can do to help? The manager, now at his wit's end, had one more trick up his sleeve. Although his lack of concentration on the job he was hired for was beginning to come under fire, he wanted to give it one more shot before he himself had to face the firing squad. He got it in his head that it was the breaks in between each 8-hour day that was allowing Phil to wind down, regain his bearings, get a good night's sleep, and come back the next day ready for more. So with that in mind, he gave Phil the budget report for the following year and told him, I don't care how long it takes, but you cannot leave your desk until we trim at least $5 million off of next year's budget. As always, Phil replied with his trademark, sure thing, boss. The manager turned away knowing that this task would be Phil's breaking point, and like clockwork, Phil came into the manager's office with the completed budget and handed it to him. Anything else I could do to help? The manager looked over the budget. I really don't like these numbers. The manager threw the report back at Phil. Do it over. And this time, do it right. Phil's smile sagged a little, but soon rebounded, and he turned around and headed back to his desk. The manager saw Phil's smile buckle for just a moment, and he chuckled to himself that his plan was finally working. 8 o'clock rolls around, and Phil returns back to the manager's office, but Phil looks a bit different. His hair is a bit disheveled. His horn-rimmed glasses are now on his forehead. One corner of his shirt has been untucked from his pants. Phil's stride isn't as carefree. Phil hands the report to the manager and exasperately utters, "Anything else I can do to help, sir?" The manager, now seeing victory close at hand, looks at the report. Phil, I think you made some miscalculations here." The manager hands the report back to Phil. "Do it again. And remember what I said. You stay until it's complete." Phil, dejected, defeated, disappointed, looks at the report in his hands, wiped the sweat from his brow, and scratched the back of his neck. The nearly broken man headed back to his desk to correct his errors. As soon as Phil left his office, the manager closed the door and danced a twisted victory dance. Phil was nearly gone. The manager was going to sleep good that night. At 11 o'clock, Phil trudged back into the manager's office and handed him the completed and corrected report. Exhausted, Phil asked, "Is there anything else I can do to help, sir?" The manager, now a shining example of pure arrogance, threw the report on the floor and exclaimed, "Why did you do the budget for next year? I asked you for the budget for this year. Can't you even follow simple instructions? I want you to march back to your pathetic little cube, and you are going to stay all night if you have to, and do exactly what I ask you to do, or so help me God, I will find someone else who can do it." Now, no one knows exactly what happened next, but some of the late-night stragglers who heard the manager's tirade claimed that as soon as he was finished, Phil took off his glasses, cleaned them with the corner of his shirt that was still untucked, put his glasses back on, and closed all the blinds in the manager's office that faced the rest of the room. What came from the room after that was a thunderous crash, a high-pitched shriek, and the door flew open and the manager bolted out of the room with glass shards in his hair, bleeding profusely from his face, screaming, "Call security! Call security!" Witnesses then claimed that they saw Phil calmly walk out of the office, blood splattered upon his shirt and hands. He held a letter opener in his right hand, now stained with blood, and Phil's calm and happy expression was lost to a visage of one person who can only be described as berserk. Phil's brow furrowed, scrunching his eyebrows into a wide arc. His teeth gnarled and, according to one person, appeared sharp and pointed. His skin, once pale and fair, now red and scaly. His slick hair now flailed wildly about his head and danced of its own accord. Phil marched towards the cowering manager. "Sure thing, sure thing, sure thing." Phil continued to chant these two words over and over, and the volume of his voice continued to climb until he was shrieking. Phil destroyed everything in his path to get to the manager, who was now scrambling for the elevator. He turned over cubicle walls, hurled the office printer, overturned desk, but was still marching at a steady pace. Not once did Phil's gait increase in speed. The elevator doors finally opened and the manager quickly darted inside, and he was frantically pounding on the door close button, but Phil's arm thrust inside the cabin, and as the doors were closing, the manager let out a girlish cry for help, and then Thomas, now sitting on the edge of his seat, blinked. "Yeah?" "Well," Frank continued, "security hauled him away. The folks that stuck around for the whole ordeal said they never heard Phil use any profanity ever, but on that day they heard curse words so vile that they almost sounded like they were some form of ancient tongue, some demonic language. Only by the grace of God was security able to restrain Phil. As the paddy wagon rolled up into the office building drive, witnesses noticed 3 things. First, that Phil was kicking and screaming the entire time and was hardly recognizable. Second, that the manager couldn't stop crying. And thirdly, and most bizarre, was they realized what made the thunderous crash in the manager's office. The 600-pound marble desk, the manager's prized possession, now lay in pieces outside the office window. "So that's it? What happened after that? There had to have been a trial," Thomas exclaimed. "Oh, there was a trial, but Phil was deemed mentally unstable to serve trial, so He was committed to the state hospital over in Brookfield. Everything died down and returned to normal. The manager was brought in to see corporate, and he was actually let go because not only did the security cameras record what Phil did to the manager and the office, but they also recorded the manager's outburst on Phil that caused him to snap in the first place. "Just desserts, I say," Thomas commented. Kirby just shook his head as he started to clean up his empty containers. "Well, here's the real punchline. And this I got from Sally Bold over at CompuTools. She used to be the manager's admin. After the manager was let go, he was cleaning out his temporary desk, and to pass the time, he had the radio on. The manager left his office for a moment to get some more boxes, and as he returned back to his office, she heard on the radio announce that Phil Kirpson, committed to Brookfield State Hospital on Monday, was discovered missing from his cell earlier today. The manager froze in horror, and as Sally turned around to see the manager's expression, the door violently slammed in her face, knocking her backwards onto the ground. As she recovered from her fall, she told me that she could clearly hear the manager pleading for his life. She distinctly heard, "Please, don't. I'll do anything you want." And then a familiar, calm, and soothing voice came from behind the door. "Anything I can do to help." Sally pounced for the door, but it was locked. She tried to look through the window, but the blinds were mostly drawn, so she could only see the flailing of arms and legs. Sally kicked at the door repeatedly and shouted, "Somebody, please help!" But it was too late. As soon as the commotion ceased from inside the office, Sally heard the knob click to signal that it had been unlocked. And with tears in her eyes, she slowly reached for the knob, opened the door, to reveal a gruesome scene. The manager splayed open from his throat to his pelvis, ribcage and organs exposed, his hands twisted in contorted knots of flesh and knuckle, his face warped into an expression of unrelenting anguish and fear, eyes wide, jaw locked, nose broken and twisted. In his left hand, its last cadence drawing to a close, was the manager's own heart. Sally and some of the onlookers who had finally gained access to the room then looked up to see the following message scrolled on the bare, dingy, yellow office wall. "We were wrong. He had a heart after all." Jesus! Thomas had to hold back the vomit by covering his mouth. After that, CompuTools shut down that office. I think they turned into a mega-buy. Frank finished his tale with a solemn sip of coffee. Thomas rubbed his eyes. "Whoa, wait a minute, whatever happened to Phil?" This is where I'm supposed to say, that's the strange thing, but it's not really that strange. When they finally opened the office, the only person in there was the manager. Sally even said she never actually saw Phil, she only heard his voice, or at least what sounded like his voice, and he hasn't been seen since. "That story is complete nonsense," Kirby exclaimed. Frank and Thomas spun around to glare at Kirby for breaking the mood. "What?" Thomas inquired. "Like you know what happened." "I just know that's not how it happened," Kirby calmly stated as he adjusted his horn-rimmed glasses. "Okay, hotshot. How do you know?" Frank jested. "Because." Kirby leaned in close, Frank and Thomas matching Kirby's movements. "The hospital doesn't know I'm gone yet." Just then, Kirby's manager leaned into the break room. "Hey, Kirb, I need you to do something for me." "Sure thing, boss." As Kirby stands up to leave the now still break room, Frank and Thomas glance down at Kirby's security badge for his full name. Kirby Phillips. Let me start by saying that Peter Terry was addicted to heroin. We were friends in college and continued to be after I graduated. Notice that I said I. He dropped out after 2 years of barely cutting it. After I moved out of the dorms and into a small apartment, I didn't see Peter as much. We would talk online every now and then. AIM was king in pre-Facebook days. There was a period where he wasn't online for about 5 weeks straight. I wasn't worried, he was a pretty notorious flake and drug addict, so I assumed he just stopped caring. Then one night, I saw him log on. Before I can initiate a conversation, he sent me a message. "David, man, we need to talk." That was when he told me about the NoEnd House. It got that name because no one had ever reached the final exit. The rules were pretty simple and cliche. Reach the final room of the building and you win $500. There were 9 rooms in all, and the house was located outside the city, roughly 4 miles from my house. Apparently, Peter had tried and failed. He was a heroin and who knows what else addict. I figured the drugs got the best of him and he wigged out over a paper ghost or something. He told me it would be too much for anyone, that it was unnatural. I didn't believe him. I told him I would check it out the next night, and no matter how hard he could try to convince me otherwise, $500 sounded too good to be true. I had to go. I set out the following night. When I arrived, I immediately noticed something strange about the building. Have you ever seen or read something that shouldn't be scary, but for some reason a chill crawls up your spine? I walked toward the building, and the feeling of uneasiness only intensified as I opened the front door. My heart slowed, and I let a relieved sigh leave me as I entered. The room looked like a normal hotel lobby decorated for Halloween. The sign was posted in the place of a worker. It read, "Room 1 this way. 8 more to follow. Reach the end, and you win." I chuckled and made my way to the first door. The first area was almost laughable. The decor resembled the Halloween aisle of a Kmart, complete with chic ghosts and animatronic zombies that gave a static growl when you passed by. At the far end was an exit. It was the only door besides the one I entered through. I brushed through the fake spider webs and headed for the second room. I was greeted by fog as I opened the door to room 2. The room definitely upped the ante in terms of technology. Not only was there a fog machine, but a bat hung from the ceiling and flew in a circle. Scary. They seemed to have a Halloween soundtrack that one would find in a 99-cent store on loop somewhere in the room. I didn't see a stereo, but I guess they must have had a PA system. I stepped over a few toy rats that wheeled around and walked with a puffed chest across to the next area. I reached for the doorknob and my heart sank to my knees. I did not want to open that door. A feeling of dread hit me so hard I could barely even think. Logic overtook me after a few terrified moments, and I shook it off and entered the next room. Room 3 is when things began to change. On the surface, it looked like a normal room. There was a chair in the middle of the wood panel floor. A single lamp in the corner did a poor job of lighting the area, casting a few shadows across the floor and walls. That was the problem. Shadows, plural. With the exception of the chairs, there were others. I had barely walked in the door, and I was already terrified. It was at that moment that I knew something wasn't right. I didn't even think as I automatically tried to open the door I came through. It was locked from the other side. That set me off. Was someone locking the doors as I progressed? There was no way. I would have heard them. Was it a mechanical lock that set automatically? Maybe, but I was too scared to really think. I turned back to the room and the shadows were gone. The chair shadow remained, but the others were gone. I slowly began to walk. I used to hallucinate when I was a kid, so I wrote off the shadows as a figment of my imagination. I began to feel a bit better as I made it to the halfway point of the room. I looked down as I took my steps, and that's when I saw it. Or didn't see it. My shadow wasn't there. I didn't have time to scream. I ran as fast as I could to the other door and flung myself without thinking into the room beyond. The fourth room was possibly the most disturbing. As I closed the door, all light seemed to be sucked out and put back into the previous room. I stood there, surrounded by darkness, not able to move. I'm not afraid of the dark and never have been, but I was absolutely terrified. All sight had left me. I held my hand in front of my face, and if I didn't know what I was doing, I would have never been able to tell. Darkness doesn't describe it. I couldn't hear anything. It was dead silence. When you're in a soundproof room, you can still hear yourself breathing. You can hear yourself being alive. I couldn't. I began to stumble forward after a few moments, my rapidly beating heart the only thing I could feel. There was no door in sight. I wasn't even sure there was one this time. The silence was then broken by a low hum. I felt something behind me. I spun around wildly but could barely even see my nose. I knew it was there though. Regardless of how dark it was, I knew something was there. The hum grew louder, closer. It seemed to surround me, but I knew whatever was causing the noise was in front of me, inching closer. I took a step back. I had never felt that kind of fear. I can't really describe true fear. I wasn't even scared I was going to die. I was scared of what the alternative was. I was afraid of what this thing had in store for me. Then, the lights flashed for a second and I saw it. Nothing. I saw nothing. And I know I saw nothing there. The room was again plunged into darkness and the hum became a wild screech. I screamed in protest. I couldn't hear this sound for another minute. I ran backwards away from the noise and fumbled for the door handle. I turned and fell into room 5. Before I describe room 5, you have to understand something. I am not a drug addict. I've had no history of drug abuse or any sort of psychosis short of the childhood hallucinations I mentioned earlier, and those were only when I was really tired or just waking up. I entered the NoEnd House with a clear head. After falling in from the previous room, my view of room 5 was from my back, looking up at the ceiling, and what I saw didn't scare me, it simply surprised me. Trees had grown into the room and towered above my head. The ceilings in this room were taller than the others, which made me think I was in the center of the house. I got off the floor, dusted myself off, and took a look around. It was definitely the biggest room of them all. I couldn't even see the door from where I was. Various brush and trees must have blocked my line of sight with the exit. Up to this point, I figured the rooms were going to get scarier, but this was a paradise compared to the last room. I also assumed whatever was in room 4 stayed back there. I was incredibly wrong. As I made my way deeper into the room, I began to hear what one would hear if they were in a forest. Chirping bugs and the occasional flap of birds seemed to be my only company. That was the thing that bothered me the most. I heard the bugs and other animals, but I didn't see any of them. I began to wonder how big this house was. From the outside, when I first walked up to it, it looked like a regular house. It was definitely on the bigger side, but there was almost an entire forest in here. The canopy covered my view of the ceiling, but I assumed it was still there, however high it was. I couldn't see any walls either. The only way I knew I was still inside was that the floor matched the other rooms with standard dark wood paneling. I kept walking, hoping that the next tree I passed would reveal the door. After a few moments of walking, I felt a mosquito fly onto my arm. I shook it off and kept going. A second later, I felt about 10 more land all over my skin. I felt them crawl up and down my arms and legs, and a few made their way across my face. I flailed wildly to get them all off, but they just kept crawling. I looked down and let out a muffled scream, but it was more of a whimper, to be honest. I didn't see a single bug. Not one bug was on me. But I could feel them crawl. I heard them fly by my face and sting my skin, but I couldn't see a single one. I dropped to the ground and began to roll wildly. I was desperate. I hated bugs, especially ones I couldn't see or touch, but these bugs could touch me, and they were everywhere. I began to crawl. I had no idea where I was going, but the entrance was nowhere in sight, and I still hadn't even seen the exit, so I just crawled, my skin wriggling with the presence of those phantom bugs. After what seemed like hours, I found the door. I grabbed the nearest tree and propped myself up, mindlessly slapping my arms and legs to no avail. I tried to run, but I couldn't. My body was exhausted for crawling and dealing with whatever it was that was on me. I took a few shaky steps to the door, grabbing each tree on my way for support. It was only a few feet away when I heard it, the low hum from before. It was coming from the next room, and it was deeper. I could almost feel it inside my body. Like when you stand next to an amp at a concert, the feeling of the bugs on me lessened as the hum grew louder. As I placed my hand on the doorknob, the bugs were completely gone, but I couldn't bring myself to turn the knob. I knew that if I let go, the bugs would return, and then there was no way I would make it back to room 4. I just stood there, my head pressed against the door marked 6, and my hand shakingly grasping the knob. The hum was so loud, I couldn't even hear myself pretend to think. There was nothing I could do but move on. Room 6 was next, and room 6 was hell. I closed the door behind me, my eyes held shut and my ears ringing. The hum was surrounding me. As the door clicked into place, the hum was gone. I opened my eyes in surprise, and the door I had shut was also gone. It was just a wall now. I looked around in shock. The room was identical to room 3, the same chair and lamp, but with the correct amount of shadows this time. The only real difference was that there was no exit door, and the one I came in through was gone. As I said before, I had no previous issues in terms of mental instability, but at that moment, I fell into what I now know was insanity. I didn't scream. I didn't make a sound. At first, I scratched softly. The wall was tough, but I knew the door was there somewhere. I just knew it was. I scratched at where the doorknob was. I clawed at the wall frantically with both hands, my nails being filed down to the skin against the wood. I fell slightly to my knees, the only sound in the room, the incessant scratching against the wall. I knew it was there. The door was there. I knew it was just there. I knew if I could just get past this wall. Are you alright? I jumped off the ground and spun in one motion. I leaned against the wall behind me and I saw what it was that spoke to me. To this day, I regret ever turning around. There was a little girl. She was wearing a soft, white dress that went down to her ankles. She had long, blonde hair to the middle of her back and white skin and blue eyes. She was the most frightening thing I had ever seen. And I know that nothing in my life will ever be as unnerving as what I saw in her. While looking at her, I saw something else. Where she stood, I saw what looked like a man's body, only larger than normal and covered in hair. He was naked from head to toe, but his head was not human. His toes were hooves. It wasn't the devil, but at that moment, it might as well have been. The form had the head of a ram and the snout of a wolf. It was horrifying, and it was synonymous with the little girl in front of me. They weren't the same form. I can't really describe it, but I saw them at the same time. They shared the same space in that room, but it was like looking at two separate dimensions. When I saw the girl, I saw the form. When I saw the form, I saw the girl. I couldn't speak. I could barely even see. My mind was revolting against what it was attempting to process. I had been scared before in my life, but I'd never been more scared than when I was trapped in the 4th room. But that was before room 6. I just stood there staring at whatever it was that spoke to me. There was no exit. I was trapped here with it. And then it spoke again. David, you should have listened. When it spoke, I heard the words of the little girl, but the other form spoke through my mind in a voice I won't attempt to describe. There was no other sound. The voice just kept repeating that sentence over and over in my mind, and I agreed. I didn't know what to do. I was slipping into madness, yet couldn't take my eyes off of what was in front of me. I dropped to the floor. I thought I had passed out, but the room wouldn't let me. I just wanted it to end. I was on my side, my eyes wide open, and the form staring down at me, scurrying across the floor. In front of me was one of the battery-powered rats from the 2nd room. The house was toying with me. For some reason, seeing that rat pulled my mind back from whatever depths it was headed, and I looked around the room. I was getting out of there. I was determined to escape the house and live and never think about this place again. I knew this room was hell, and I wasn't ready to take up a residency. At first, it was just my eyes that moved. I searched the walls for any kind of opening. The room wasn't that big, so it didn't take long to soak up the entire layout. The demon still taunted me, the voice growing louder as the form stayed rooted where it stood. I placed my hand on the floor, lifted myself up to all fours, and tried to scan the wall behind me. Then I saw something I couldn't believe. The form was now right at my back, whispering into my mind about how I shouldn't have come. I felt its breath on the back of my neck, but I refused to turn around. A large rectangle was scratched into the wood, with a small dent chipped away in the center of it, right in front of my eyes. I saw the large 7 I had mindlessly etched into the wall. I knew what it was. Room 7 was just beyond that wall, where room 5 was moments ago. I don't know how I had done it. Maybe it was just my state of mind at the time, but I had created the door. I knew I had. In my madness, I had scratched into the wall what I needed the most, an exit to the next room. Room 7 was close. I knew the demon was right behind me, but for some reason it couldn't touch me. I closed my eyes and placed both hands on the large 7 in front of me. I pushed as hard as I could. The demon was now screaming in my ear. It told me I was never leaving. It told me that this was the end, but I wasn't going to die. I was going to live there at room 6 with it. I wasn't. I pushed and screamed at the top of my lungs. I knew I was going to push through the wall eventually. Clutched my eyes shut and screamed, and the demon was gone. I was left in silence. I turned around slowly and was greeted by the room as it was when I entered. Just a chair and a lamp. I couldn't believe it, but I didn't have time to waste. I turned back to the 7 and jumped back slightly. What I saw was a door. It wasn't the one I had scratched in, but a regular door with a large 7 on it. My whole body was shaking. It took me a while to turn the knob. I just stood there for a while, staring at the door. I couldn't stay in room 6. I couldn't, but if this was only room 6, I couldn't imagine what 7 had in store. I must have stood there for an hour just staring at the 7. Finally, with a deep breath, I twisted the knob and opened the door to room 7. I stumbled through the door, mentally exhausted and physically weak. The door behind me closed and I realized where I was. I was outside. Not outside like room 5, but actually outside. My eyes stunk. I wanted to cry. I fell to my knees and tried, but I couldn't. I was finally out of all that mess. I didn't even care about the prize that was promised. I turned and saw that the door I just went through was the entrance. I walked in my car and drove home, thinking of how nice a shower sounded. As I pulled up to my house, I felt uneasy. The joy of leaving NoEnd House had faded, and dread was slowly building in my stomach. I shook it off as residual from the house and made my way to the front door. I entered and immediately went up to my room. There, on my bed, was my cat, Bakersville. He was the first living thing I had seen all night, and I reached to pet him. He hissed and swiped at my hand. I recoiled in shock, as he never acted like that. I thought, whatever, he's an old cat. I jumped in the shower and got ready for what I was expecting to be a sleepless night. After my shower, I went to the kitchen to make something to eat. I descended the stairs and turned into the family room. What I saw would be forever burned into my mind, however. My parents were laying on the ground, naked and covered in blood. They'd been mutilated to near unidentifiable states. Their limbs had been removed and placed next to their bodies, and their heads sat on their chests, facing me. The most unsettling part was their expressions. They were smiling, as though they were happy to see me. I vomited and sobbed there in the family room. I didn't know what had happened. They didn't even live with me at the time. I was a mess. Then I saw it. A door that was never there before. A door with a large 8 scrawled on it in blood. I was still in the house. I was standing in my family room, but I was in room 7. The faces of my parents smiled wider as I realized this. They weren't my parents. They couldn't be. But they looked exactly like them. The door marked 8 was across the room, behind the mutilated bodies in front of me. I knew I had to move on. But at that moment, I gave up. The smiling faces tore into my mind. They grounded me where I stood. I vomited again and nearly collapsed. Then, the hum returned. It was louder than ever, and it filled the house and shook the walls. The hum compelled me forwards. I began to move slowly, making my way closer to the door and the bodies. I could barely stand, let alone walk, and the closer I got to my parents, the closer I came to suicide. The walls were now shaking so hard it seemed as though they were going to crumble, but still, the faces smiled at me. As I inched closer, their eyes followed me. I was now between the 2 bodies, a few feet away from the door. The disembodied hands crawled their ways across the carpet towards me, all while the faces continued to stare. New terror washed over me, and I walked faster. I didn't want to hear them speak. I didn't want the voices to match those of my parents. They began to open their mouths, and the hands were inches from my feet. In a dash of desperation, I lunged towards the door, threw it open, and slammed it behind me. Room 8. I was done. After what I just experienced, I knew there wasn't anything else this house could throw at me that I couldn't live through. There was nothing short of the fires of hell that I wasn't ready for. Unfortunately, I underestimated the abilities of NoEnd House. Unfortunately, things got more disturbing, more terrifying, and more unspeakable in Room 8. I still have trouble believing what I saw in Room 8. Again, the room was a carbon copy of Rooms 3 and 6, but sitting in the usual empty chair was a man. After a few seconds of disbelief, my mind finally accepted the fact that the man sitting in that chair was me. Not someone who looked like me. It was David Williams. I walked closer. I had to get a better look. Even though I wasn't sure of it, he looked up at me and I noticed tears in his eyes. Please, don't do it. Please don't hurt me. What? I asked. Who are you? I'm not gonna hurt you. Yes, you are. He was sobbing now. You're gonna hurt me. I don't want you to. He sat in the chair with his legs up and began rocking back and forth. It was actually pretty pathetic looking, especially since he was me. Identical in every way. Listen, who are you? I was now only a few feet away from my doppelganger. It was the weirdest experience yet, standing there talking to myself. I wasn't scared, but I would be soon. Why are you... You're gonna hurt me. You're gonna hurt me. If you want to leave, you're gonna hurt me. Why are you saying this? Just calm down, alright? Let's try and figure this... And then I saw it. The David sitting down was wearing the same clothes as me, except for a small red patch on his shirt embroidered with the number 9. You're gonna hurt me. You're gonna hurt me. Don't. Please. You're gonna hurt me. My eyes didn't leave that small number on his chest. I knew exactly what it was. The first few doors were plain and simple, but after a while they got a little more ambiguous. 7 was scratched into the wall, but by my own hands. 8 was marked in blood above the bodies of my parents, but 9... This number was on a person, a living person, and worse still, it was on a person that looked exactly like me. David? I had to ask. Yes. You're gonna hurt me. You're gonna hurt me. He continued to sob and rock. He answered to David. He was me. Right down to the voice, but that 9... I paced around for a few minutes while he sobbed in his chair. The room had no door, and similarly to room 6, the door I came through was gone. For some reason, I assumed that scratching would get me nowhere this time. I studied the walls and floor around the chair, sticking my head underneath and seeing if anything was below, and unfortunately, there was. Below the chair was a knife. Attached was a tag that read, "To David, from management." The feeling in my stomach as I read that tag was something sinister. I felt like throwing up. The last thing I wanted to do was remove that knife from under that chair. The other David was still sobbing uncontrollably. My mind was spinning into an attic of unanswerable questions. Who put this here? And how did they get my name? Not to mention the fact that as I knelt on the cold wood floor, I also sat in that chair, sobbing in protest of being hurt by myself. It was all too much to process. The house and the management have been playing with me this whole time. My thoughts, for some reason, turned to Peter, and whether or not he got this far. If he did, if he met a Peter Terry sobbing in this very chair, rocking back and forth, I shook those thoughts out of my head. They didn't matter. I took the knife from under the chair, and immediately the other David went quiet. "David," he said in my voice, "what do you think you're going to do?" I lifted myself from the ground and clenched the knife in my hand. "I'm going to get out of here." David was still sitting in the chair, though he was very calm now. He looked up at me with a slight grin. I couldn't tell if he was going to laugh, strangle me. Slowly, he got up from the chair and stood, facing me. It was uncanny. His height, even the way he stood, matched mine. I felt the rubber hilt of the knife in my hand and gripped it tighter. I don't know what I was planning on doing with it, but I had a feeling I was going to need it. "Now," his voice was slightly deeper than my own, "I'm going to hurt you. I'm gonna hurt you, and I'm gonna keep you here." I didn't respond. I just lunged and tackled him to the ground. I mounted him and looked down, knife poised and ready. He looked up at me, terrified. It was like looking in a mirror. Then the hum returned, low and distant, though I still felt it deep in my body. David looked up to me as I looked down at myself. The hum was getting louder, and I felt something inside me snap. With one motion, I slammed the knife down into the patch onto his chest and ripped down. Blackness fell on the room, and I was falling. The darkness around me was like nothing I experienced up to that point. Room 4 was dark, but it didn't come close to what was completely engulfing me. I wasn't even sure if I was falling after a while. I felt weightless, covered in dark. Then a deep sadness came over me. I felt lost, depressed, suicidal. The sight of my parents entered my mind. I knew it wasn't real, but I had seen it. And the mind has trouble differentiating between what is real and what isn't. The sadness only deepened. I was in room 9 for what seemed like days. The final room. And that's exactly what it was. The end. NoEnd House had an end, and I reached it. At that moment, I gave up. I knew I would be in that in-between state forever, accompanied by nothing but darkness. Not even the hum was there to keep me sane. I'd lost all senses. I couldn't feel myself. I couldn't hear anything. Sight was completely useless here. I searched for a taste in my mouth and found nothing. I felt disembodied and completely lost. I knew where I was. This was hell. Room 9 was hell. Then it happened. A light. One of those stereotypical lights at the end of the tunnel. I felt ground come up from below me and I was standing. After a moment or two of gathering my thoughts and senses, I slowly walked toward that light. As I approached the light, it took form. It was a vertical slit down the side of an unmarked door. I slowly walked through the door and found myself back where I started. The lobby of NoEnd House. It was exactly how I left it. Still empty. Still decorated with childish Halloween decorations. After everything that had happened that night, I was still wary of where I was. After a few moments of normalcy, I looked around the place trying to find anything different. On the desk was a plain white envelope with my name handwritten on it. Immensely curious yet still cautious, I mustered up the courage to open the envelope. Inside was a letter, again, handwritten. David Williams, congratulations. You have made it to the end of NoEnd House. Please accept this prize as a token of a great achievement. Yours forever, Management. With the letter were 5 $100 bills. I couldn't stop laughing. I laughed for what seemed like hours. I laughed as I walked out to my car. I laughed as I drove home. I laughed as I pulled into my driveway. I laughed as I opened my front door to my house and as I saw the small 10 etched into the wood. We've all been there. You have just gone to a certain place at a certain time on a certain date, done a special thing, and the thing you suspected would happen has just happened. Not to mention the fact that you've seen whatever it is that lives in your mirror, been told in detail how you're going to die, and the highly demonic and invincible thing you summoned is heading towards you. Also, your family are all dead, your friends are all missing, and you're being framed by someone with access to your bedroom. What do you do now, sweet protagonist? Well, you've come to the right place to find out. These are the simple rules one must follow in order to, firstly, not become the victim of creepypasta, and furthermore, to come out kicking if the worst does happen. With the help of this guide, you too can merely be a catatonic traumatized wreck as opposed to the guy currently being worn as a coat by some dude who roams around a lot. Just keep these simple rules in mind. Rule number 1. Mirrors and darkness don't mix. Number 2. Actually, mirrors are a general no in the creepypasta world. There is nothing more sinister. Rule number 3. There is 0 chance of survival if you look at the thing that no one else can see or answer its question incorrectly. Rule number 4. If you are alone at night in a creepy mental institution, take some time to consider what are you doing there. Then, if it is appropriate to do so, leave. Rule number 5. Avoid going to places where everyone else who went there never came back or died inexplicably. Rule number 6. If someone stops your vehicle at night and asks to come with you, it would probably be in your best interest to politely decline. Rule number 7. Killing is the last method of survival. Use it sparingly, but without fear. Rule number 8. Who was phone? Is always a good thing to ponder. Also, who in the world answers a phone while having sex with a dead person's sexy daughter? A weirdo. That's who. Rule number 9. Get a simple .38 revolver and load it with 2 silver bullets. If you really feel there is no chance to come out of a situation alive, take 1 shot at whatever it is that's threatening you, and if this doesn't work, you still have the last shot to become a tragic hero with. Rule number 10, Area 51 is simply too well guarded to let you get in or to let any alien out. Rule number 11, when going to a hotel, try to steer clear of unauthorized areas. If you couldn't resist and you saw something red, take some time to consider the price range and hotel standard on your next visit. Have you ever stayed at a haunted Hilton? Rule number 12, when booking your hotel stay, TripAdvisor can be an invaluable tool in deeming whether your choice is the scene of a mass murder, full of dead people, or literally built at the mouth of hell. Local newspapers can also be helpful. Rule number 13, invoking demons, speaking weird languages, and performing rituals of any kind is considered dangerous. Refrain from doing that, especially around abandoned warehouses, churches, psychiatric institutions, the woods, and your house in front of a mirror at night. Rule number 14, when going to a new area, environmental understanding is key to survival. Ask around for cursed places, legends, dangers, and other details. Listen to the local people's advice, and don't be afraid to ask if you're unsure which attacks and disappearances are paranormal and which aren't. Rule number 15, always have a Bible next to your bed. Provides average reading material, proof of beliefs, and a really heavy and effective object to throw at enemies. Rule number 16, don't count on holy water. Get a sturdy vial of sulfuric acid and let a priest consecrate it. Rule number 17, Japanese priests cleanse rooms by waving katana swords around. Their ritual is 100% effective on corporeal forms as well. Rule number 18, if you find 666 messages on your phone, mailbox, email, etc., consider changing your service provider. Also, don't bother listening to or reading the messages. It's spam. Extra dimensional possibly, but it's spam nonetheless. Rule number 19, old pharmaceutical companies cannot help you unless you specifically need blood of the innocent, snake oil, and radioactive syrup, which you don't. Rule number 20, if you need to sign it in blood, you do not need to sign it. All mainstream governing bodies will accept contracts signed in ink. Bear this in mind if offered deals that seem too good to be true. Rule number 21, lighthouses are dangerous. Avoid them at all costs. If you work at a lighthouse, consider a career in insurance sales or veterinary care. Have you ever read The Skeleton Key? Rule number 22, there is simply no reason to listen to music that causes suicidal tendencies. Rule number 23, or to watch films that have strange, disastrous consequences. Rule number 24, if you plan ahead and have some money, buy your auntie and uncle a house in Bel Air. Nothing can harm you there, no matter how scared your mother is. Rule number 25, secret, secluded, untouched places in old buildings are left untouched for a reason. Pioneers never say die, but in fact they do have an unusually high mortality rate. Rule number 26, before you start swimming in the ice-cold waters of a murky lake at the center of a dark forest at midnight, ask yourself, do you really want to travel to an ancient and terrifying city? If the answer is no, then stay at home instead. Watch whatever quality programming is available on Cinemax. Rule number 27, on your 33rd birthday, try celebrating in a well-lit house with the company of others. Rule number 28, watching TV static for long periods of time may be hazardous to your health. Try satellite TV or Freeview to combat this problem. Netflix and internet streaming are also effective. Rule number 29, get a cat. Those furry little hairballs seem to perceive unnatural phenomenon better than us. And if desperate, simply throw it at whatever it is about to get you. Rule number 30, safety in numbers. If you're getting a bit too freaked out, grab a few friends. Any and all firearms and avoid the area in question. Rule number 31, cemeteries are bad places, especially on foggy conditions or on Halloween. Rule number 32, try not to close your eyes. Ever. If you must do so only briefly. If something has moved from its original location in the time it has taken you to blink, it is recommended that you do not blink again until you have dealt with said object. Fire is presumably the best method. Rule number 33, if you ever find an unmarked tape that contains the file extension .avi, even if it's one of your favorite kids shows, do not, under any circumstances, watch that tape. Now, if the extension is MTS, that is a different matter altogether. Rule number 34, if you hear chanting, run until you are out of earshot. Rule number 35, if you are too old to play with dolls, you do not need to be anywhere near one of those creepy little buggers. Rule number 36, legends can offer valuable insight of where not to go camping with friends. Rule number 37, when babysitting, ascertain the family's tastes and preferences to avoid being killed by poorly selected statues. Rule number 38, even if you are certain, then running will not save you. It is always best to try. Rule number 39, if you go to buy a used video game, whether it's at a game shop or a garage sale, never, ever buy one with a weird-looking cartridge. This includes strange colors, ripped-off labels with titles written in marker. The latter tends to happen more often than not. And for the daring, don't just buy said game to become famous. Your chances of becoming an internet celebrity because of it can only work if you know how to program. You should also be highly suspicious of games priced too cheaply and bootlegs. Rule number 40, if you decide to buy the used game anyway, rip it out of your console the moment it starts acting funny and take a hammer to it. Rule number 40, if you ever see a strangely new-looking doorway with a strange face on it on a building you swore you didn't see at first and that building happens to be an old chateau, don't open it. Rule number 42. It's probably best to refrain from looking up on Google the phrase "huskies with grins." You'll just end up having to spread the word. Rule number 43. Never allow someone to take a picture of you with an outdated camera. If it's too late, your only bet is to gamble with death. Or just trap him in a photo. That works too. Rule number 44. Don't play with dolls if they come with a needle or a defect. Especially a defect. Rule number 45, burn Ouija boards, but be sure to have one of those car fresheners handy. The real reason why spirits get so agitated is because of the foul aroma it produces when burned. Rule number 46, never confront animated puppets physically. Subdue them with spells or they'll come back with minions or in a real physical body. Rule number 47, if you find yourself unable to escape, dancing may ward off the entity. Doing the hokey pokey is known to ward off curious monsters, but you might have to do the moonwalk to deal with zombies. Rule number 48, if you are checking your computer for viruses and you go too deep into System 32, refrain from clicking on any .avi files. If you do not heed this warning, creepy videos on you, dude. Rule number 49, if you see old tapes containing the words happy or appy, pretend you never saw them. Just go on with your life. You'll just end up invoking some whacked out, coked up director of an old children's show and you'll wind up having to pull some things for the ride bullcrap to kill him. Rule number 50, if you buy a used camcorder and find the previous owner left one of their tapes inside, refrain from watching that tape, no matter how tempting it may be. Rule number 51, be careful when buying an old second-hand TV. Rule number 52, if you see a guy with both an incredibly large smile and black and white eyes, extricate yourself from the premises post-haste. Rule number 53, don't go to a friend's house to bake cupcakes if they have random spurts of insanity. Rule number 54, phone companies with low coverage are best avoided. Rule number 55, .exe files with strange names are not safe. Don't open them. Rule number 56, for the love of Neptune, turn off your faucet when you're done with it. Rule number 57, if you are told not to look behind you, it is better to do so, unless you're up against a wall. Rule number 58, also do not listen to anybody who tells you to go to sleep. It's better to run away. Rule number 59, if you see a tall man with tentacles, run. Rule number 60, don't enter strange websites. Rule number 61, don't enter strange places. Rule number 62, not even strange videos. Rule number 63, if a woman who covers her mouth asks you if she is beautiful, tell her she's average. It'll prevent her from slicing your mouth. Rule number 64, no good can ever come from owning a shiny Pokemon. Rule number 65, if you're an intern at a cartoon studio and you happen to be reviewing a new episode, make sure the episode is safe for work before viewing it. Rule number 66, don't be so excited when asking to look behind you. But don't take forever. No reason to keep certain death waiting. Rule number 67, weird stuff in Europe won't hurt you in the United States. Rule number 68, weird stuff in the United States won't hurt you in Europe. Dang it. Rule number 69, should you break Rule 53, there is always a chance of rescue. Rule number 70. If your brother is tired of noise, or if your close friend has a brother like that, refrain from going into his basement unless you want to be tortured, assaulted, and killed. Rule number 71. If you buy a memory card and it has saved data in it, delete all of the saves. Rule number 72. If you get a drawing of Sonic on a disc and the only file on that disc is an exe file called Sonic, don't play it. Destroy it, or a demonic being that looks like a Sonic plushie might kill you. If he chooses not to, he will scar you for life. Rule number 73. If you see what happens to be a 12-year-old kid with black shorts, a gray bloody shirt, red shades, dark gray skin, and a maniac grin, do not under any circumstances annoy him. Unless you're werepire. Or brave. Rule number 74. Neighbors may have a dark side. If they do things that seem off for them, act normal. Rule number 75. In addition to Rule 74, if you hear foreign voices from your body, that means you've been body-jacked. Rule number 76. If you're an adult and notice that you are being stalked by a guy with a black suit, long arms, and no face, reach for the nearest child and throw him or her at him, then run. Rule number 77. If you are a child in the same situation, run before said adult uses you to satisfy the aforementioned being's craving for hunger. If you do not manage to escape before the adult snags you, try bargaining with the Slender Man that the adult has more delicious flesh. Rule number 78. The Slender Man, said monster described in the last 2 tapes, feeds on paranoia. If you remember that Slenderman only wants a hug, he won't go after you. But if Slenderman does stalk you, run. Rule number 79. If all else fails, give Slenderman $20. And he should leave you alone. Rule number 80. If you see someone crawling around, it's more likely to be something. But you don't want any more information about it. Rule number 81. If you are a police officer, state trooper, FBI agent, or any person of authority, and you have 2 days left until retirement, if you notice anything suspicious or potentially dangerous to your health, get out of there immediately. Rule number 82. If you are being chased by any creepypasta and feel that you are 100% out of options, attempt to run to wherever Stephen King is doing his next book signing. Your killer will be far too interested in trying to get an autograph to remember what they were doing there in the first place. Stephen King is not available in your general vicinity at the time. R.L. Stine is always available. Rule number 83. If you are a creepypasta reader and feel like things are getting a little too real, take a break. Rule number 84. If you find a magic stick that allows you to draw living creatures, don't draw yourself. You may be surprised at how angry your creations can get at you. Rule number 85. If you wake up in the middle of the woods after having fallen asleep listening to your own heartbeat, take notice that someone probably put you there. But don't call the police. Publish a book of it and get a movie deal. Rule number 86. If you're being offered an orange by a demon, don't take it. Rule number 87. On the 3rd day of the 3rd month of every 33rd year, seal up all the openings to your house, unless you want to be eaten by an evil mist. Rule number 88. If you notice that you're being stalked by a screaming child in a skull mask, don't always assume the kid's evil. Just be sure to save the buncha crunch, should you have any. Rule number 89. When reminiscing about your favorite kids show on a message board, take a moment to consider if the episode where all the characters screamed their lungs out was real or not. Also take a moment to consider if the entire show was real or not. Rule number 90. When looking through mysterious blood-soaked pictures left in your mailbox, check to make sure you locked your doors and windows. Rule number 91. Remember, snowmen have feelings too. Rule number 92. Stitches is naked. Covering him with a towel will cause him to die. Do so. Rule number 93. If your friend disturbingly edits tapes, it's probably a good idea to never try to see him again. Rule number 94. If you keep finding broken glass in your home, check to see if the shards match the glass of the glass object that was broken. If they don't, run. Rule number 95. If Jeff the Killer shows up in your bedroom unarmed and invites you to follow him to his home, for God's sake, don't do it. Rule number 96. Should you notice that your friend has suddenly developed a personality that's a mix between Heath Ledger's Joker and Beetlejuice, he or she is most likely inhabited. It would be best to keep clear of this person until they return to their normal, boring personality. Rule number 97. If you encounter a small creature that looks like a mutant four-armed baby with Jeff the Killer's face, don't listen to it. not even if it offers you gold. Rule number 98, if you are still using Windows XP and you use it every day with internet, sticking with it is a pretty stupid decision. End of support means more doors opening for viruses and even more doors opening for crazy things. Rule number 99, stay far, far away from abandoned amusement parks. Rule number 100, if your son starts talking about some sort of doll from any game, do not play the game. Check the gaming system. Play baseball with it. Rule number 101, if you do play the game and later hear any tapping at any place in your home, yell to the child to lock their door and jump from a window. It is wise to then light the house on fire and jump from the window with your spouse. Rule number 102, be atheist, or convert to any religion that isn't monotheism. So when a monster says, I am God, or an insane man says God abandoned us, you will chuckle since it's an overused cliche instead of getting scared by your own broken faith. Church always fails to save you from creepypasta, and the Bible is only as good as any other heavy object to throw. So there is no real benefit anyway. 103, always think twice before doing something stupid, or doing something you might regret. Rule number 104, if you come across a pro wrestling DVD you've never heard of, it was likely never released for a reason. Rule number 105, if you are browsing the internet and a colorful pop-up that says, you win, you lose, or you die appears, for God's sake, don't click on it. Rule number 106, if a magic 8-ball gives you anything but yes, no, or maybe, destroy it. Rule number 107, do not go to any halfway house or mental institution you can get yourself into in any city in any country unless your name happens to be Legion. Rule number 108, if you do not end up in any halfway house or mental institution you can get yourself into, do not talk to the receptionist at the front desk. Instead, read a magazine, pamphlet, or any source of reading material on one of the tables in the waiting area, unless your name is Legion. 109, if you do talk to said receptionist at the front desk of the halfway house or mental institution, do not ask for anyone whose name starts with the holder of, unless your name is Legion. Rule 110, do not collect all 538 objects. There is a reason why they must never come together, of course, unless your name is Legion. Rule number 111, if you find a box with dozens of tapes inside of it, just leave it alone. It might be some kid you punched in the face a while ago is now out to kill everyone. Rule number 112, there are some parts of YouTube you should not be in. Rule number 113, don't kill anyone because you made a page on a website and an admin or someone deleted it. Just don't. You should probably just go read a book or something. Rule number 114, if you buy used wireless headphones off the internet, rip those things off your head as soon as you hear static and/or voices. Rule number 115, if you attempt to bypass a level in any extremely hard typing game, you might find yourself trying to kidnap children whilst wearing a chef hat. Rule number 116, in addition to Rule 115, there was probably a reason why the level was so hard. Rule number 117, if you go camping in the woods and find a cabin, you should probably leave it alone. You've watched the movies. Rule number 118, everyone's scared of something. If you're not scared of anything, you're a liar. Rule number 119, when playing Minecraft, do not set the render distance to tiny. Rule number 120, if you do set your render distance to tiny and you see a mob that looks like Steve in the distance, set render distance to full. Rule number 121, if said mob is still sighted, delete the game. Rule number 122, if said mob, known as Herobrine, is in every game, delete Minecraft. Rule number 123, if you are in your bedroom at night and you wake to seeing a feeble-looking gray humanoid at the end of your bed, do not hesitate to throw your covers over it and try to punch it to death. Maybe put that Bible that was mentioned earlier to good use. Rule number 124, if previously mentioned creature escapes your grasp, it will stalk you and maul you. So if sighted again, run. Rule 125, monsters still bleed. If forced to fight one, don't think that all hope is lost. Rule number 126, better safe than sorry. If you do kill whatever it is that attacked you, don't think that you're safe yet. Shoot and stab into every vital organ you can think of, sever limbs, burn the corpse, and/or putting it through a meat grinder helps as well. Rule number 127. If a banshee is screaming the life out of you, that's the only sign that you are going to die a slow, painful death. Rule number 128. If you have a Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon card and that it is very ominous, either creates death or magic that you've never imagined, either burn the card or cut it to pieces with scissors. Abandoning it, for example throwing it in the trash, would simply be making you its next victim. Rule number 129. Demonic or spiritual forces can enter any object or person with ease, but can be kept out of any object by letting a priest or a group of priests do an exorcism, as long as you or any members of your family aren't the cause of it. Rule number 130. Seek a fortune teller if you happen to have a spiritual experience that will affect your future. Rule number 131. Rap Rat is not a song artist. In fact, just stay away from anything that concerns him. Rule number 132. Slenderman does not always kill out of hunger or boredom. If he's stalking you, ask yourself if your death would benefit humanity. If it will, just throw in the towel, because he's coming. Don't believe me? Go ask all those Nazi soldiers found impaled on trees. Rule number 133. Hide and seek is an evil game. Rule number 134. Before you consider those horrible figments of your deranged imagination your friends, take a good look at their faces. If they have yellow eyes or are impossibly deformed, take as many pills as your local psychiatrist is willing to give. Rule 135. If you suspect that an immortal, armless monster wants to put a foot through your stomach, run. Rule number 136. If your walls bleed phrases that make no sense, try reading them backwards. Rule number 137. If your walls start bleeding in the first place, it's probably best to burn the house down. Rule number 138. If that one wall is miraculously unburned, run. Rule number 139. Get in shape. The only thing you can do to evade the majority of creepypastas is to run. Rule number 140. If you are paraplegic, make like Happy Wheels and fashion on some rockets. Rule number 141. If any kind of man or beast appears in your room in the middle of the night, then it's probably best to stab it, and stab it, and stab it. Rule number 142. If you have no other weapons, put that Bible I told you to keep next to your bed to good use. And finally, rule number 143. The creepypastas that become famous can't be forced. They just happen. If you are deliberately putting yourself in danger against powerful, extremely bloodthirsty beings so that you can write a non-profit story to put on a wiki webpage, it might be time to accept you are a complete imbecile. Follow these simple rules and little or massive harm may befall you. Either way, the important thing is to make sure your tale is told, copied, and pasted repeatedly. Forever yours, Management. Well, that's all for now. I know. We're missing some of the big hitters, right? Pen Pal, Tales of the Gas Station, My Property Isn't Normal, Baraska, etc. But not only are all of those stories 2 to 5 hours long, and you can already see how long this one was, I wanted to try and give the smaller, medium-scale stories a video to themselves. I'll probably do another video like this because I really enjoyed reading some of these old stories, and I will still try to script an intelligent-sounding video about creepypasta in general. But until either of those ideas come to fruition, I'd like to thank you all for watching, or just listening to me prattle on in the background. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.